Call today's Plan Commission meeting to order. Please join me with the pledge. This meeting is being recorded, so board, when you speak, please introduce yourself and make sure the mic is on. First item of business is the approval of the minutes from the May 26th meeting. I'll move to approve those.
I'll second.
All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. New business, we have RZ 2026-4, public hearing of a rezone from agriculture to ag overlay with Copperbox Solar. Tom, will you please present?
Yes, Tom Klein, County Administrator. I'll be reading a shortened report to you. I did send you the longer staff report via email. It is on the website, and you also have a copy of that in the packet. Copperbox Solar is petitioning to rezone 17 parcels in southern Madison Township and northern Union Township from agricultural to agricultural overlay. If the property is rezoned as requested, Copperbox intends to construct and develop a commercial solar energy system with approximately 825 acres containing solar panels or equipment. The total area subject to the rezone is 2,620 acres. This project will have a maximum rated capacity of 200 megawatts of electricity. Under the provisions of Article 13 of the zoning ordinance, a commercial solar energy system means a system that has a nameplate capacity of at least 10 megawatts for use in locations other than where it is generated. Copperbox indicates in its project narrative that it reserves the right to modify the location of project components and improvements within the project area to accommodate project criteria. Unless conditions are imposed as part of an approval of the requested rezone, the actual locations and the number of acres under solar panels will not be known until the development plan is submitted to the Commission for approval. Section 13.04 provides that the required setback for all ground-mounted solar panels and arrays is 100 feet from the center of any road, alley, or public way. Copperbox represents that its project will have a minimum 50-foot setback from the right-of-way of state, county, and state aid highways, and a 40-foot setback from the right-of-way for other roads. Commission members may want to ask for clarification concerning setbacks because of the use of the terms center of road versus rights of way. Copperbox also represents that it intends to exercise its right to request a development standards variance from the Board of Zoning Appeals rather than comply with the noise limitations imposed by the zoning ordinance. Copperbox estimates the probable cost of decommissioning to be $6 million. One of these factors, and it may consider other relevant factors. The Commission is required to consider the totality of these factors in making its decision. No one factor controls the consideration. Staff's analysis of the statutory factors is as follows. Regarding the comprehensive plan, staff believes approving the rezone would be contrary to the plan for the following reasons. The plan articulates that an industrial solar farm is an undesirable land use. Prior to adoption of the plan, the county determined that industrial solar farms should not be permitted as a land use in agricultural districts when it adopted Article 13 as part of its zoning ordinance. Article 13 created a path for industrial solar farms to be considered in the agricultural overlay district and the industrial district, but the county's path requires a rezone if the land is zoned agricultural. No party is entitled to a rezone, and the Board of Commissioners' decision in each rezone case is discretionary. The plan notes that the requirement for a rezone for land in the agricultural district was added to the zoning ordinance so that the Board of Commissioners could carefully consider any such applications. Facts such as size of scope of the project, proximity to adjacent residential houses, noise, light, and other impacts affect the Board of Commissioners' decision-making as it exercises its discretion. The new comprehensive plan was adopted by the Board of Commissioners in 2024 and is the official policy of Montgomery County. The plan's vision is carried out by way of the zoning ordinance, which is the law. The Board of Commissioners decided that industrial solar was an undesirable use and that such use should be allowed only after careful consideration. The plan specifically states that one of its goals is to formulate and implement land use management policies that discourage undesirable development of large industrial solar farms. It further states that the objective is to facilitate the necessary due diligence around renewable energy and large-scale industrial solar and wind projects. The community vision statement states that Montgomery County will be responsible stewards of our rural character and agricultural assets. Although the project may allow the agricultural land to be placed back into service, the land will be taken out of agricultural production for 30 years or so. Regarding current conditions and the character of current structures and uses in each district, staff believes that the construction and development of approximately 825 acres of industrial solar facilities across approximately 2,620 acres of agricultural and rural residential land is inconsistent with the current conditions and the character of current structures and uses in the district. This area has a very high percentage of farmland, and rezoning 2,620 of these acres would substantially change the conditions and character of uses in this area. Montgomery County's policy is that industrial solar is an undesirable land use and it is not permitted in the agricultural district. Furthermore, the policy is reflected in Article 13 of the zoning ordinance, which creates a separate district for commercial solar and which requires a proposal for such projects in the agricultural district to obtain a rezone. The scale of this proposed project means that, if approved, the project will significantly change the area for 30 years. Regarding the most desirable use for which the land in each district is adapted, staff believes that the most desirable use of this land is continued agricultural use rather than the proposed project. Montgomery County has highly productive farmland, and one of the goals of the comprehensive plan, which is implemented through the zoning ordinance, is the preservation of this valuable farmland. Regarding the conservation of property values throughout the jurisdiction, Copper Box included with its submission a study that there will be no negative impact on home values or agricultural land. Staff would note that in prior public hearings regarding solar projects, many landowners have indicated that they believe they will suffer from declining land values because of an adjacent solar project. Staff believes that evidence on this factor is mixed. The Commission will need to carefully consider the evidence presented and make an appropriate finding. And finally, regarding responsible development and growth, staff agrees that the project will not cause significant adverse impacts on public infrastructure or services. Staff also agrees that based upon the current property tax regime, the project will produce an increase in property taxes collected. Staff would note that the financial benefit is based upon the current property tax regime, and that regime can change. Therefore, there is some question as to the permanency of these calculations. Furthermore, as noted on the analysis for the most desirable use, increased property tax collections alone should not be the reason to recommend that this land be rezoned. Based upon the totality of these factors, staff finds that the proposed rezone is inconsistent with the comprehensive plan, is inconsistent with the current conditions and character of current structures and uses, is not the most desirable use for which the land in this district is adapted, and may be inconsistent with the conservation of property values throughout the jurisdiction. Therefore, staff recommends that the Commission adopt an unfavorable recommendation for this rezone request. If the Commission wishes to adopt a favorable recommendation, staff recommends that its recommendation contain the following conditions: that the development plan presented to the Commission after the effective date of the rezone will be in substantial compliance with the site plan and other materials submitted by Copper Box or used by Copper Box during the Commission's public hearing in this case. That the sizes of the trees and shrubs in the proposed non-uniform landscape buffer must follow the standards in section 13.21. That no more than 825 acres of the rezoned land will consist of solar panels and equipment. That the fire control plan must be approved by the Crawfordsville Fire Chief prior to permitting. I would also like to note that Copper Box has submitted revised agreements for the decommissioning and road plan, and they appear to be in compliance with our request for changes. I also want to note that we have received written emails regarding comments on this project. We've received 14 emails in favor of the project and 46 emails against the project.
Thank you, Tom. At this time, Tom, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Jake. Quite a few Toms in the room here tonight. Is it going to present mode for you? All right. Thank you. Appreciate it. My name is Tom Scoder. I'm the lead project manager for the Copper Box Solar Project. Thank you for your time here this evening. It really doesn't seem like all that long ago we were here talking about the project back in March. And you might be wondering the rationale here for a reapplication. So I just wanted to take a minute to pause and kind of explain where we're coming from here. You know, what we did not want to do back in April was rush this project through to a commissioner vote. We thought in the Plan Commission hearing back in March, we heard a lot of good feedback, not only from you all on the commission, but also from the community, from project neighbors. And we wanted to incorporate that feedback. So we're coming here tonight with a materially improved application with changes based on feedback that we've heard through continuous conversations in the community. And so we're looking forward to walking through those project changes, those improvements, and also looking forward to answering any questions that you might have. We have a group of project advisors here who are subject matter experts in their given areas, and if you have specific questions for them, by all means, feel free to ask. So without further ado, so I first want to just take a second to talk about the project improvements and a high-level overview here. So as I mentioned, we listened to what the community had to say. We've strengthened our evidence, and we've made some material changes. And I'll acknowledge that this process is iterative. We will continue to listen throughout this project as we move forward. So the two major changes are, number one, we reduced impacts. And so basically what that means is we increased residential setbacks when it comes to panels, the project substation, and the construction staging area. We also added additional landscaping and vegetative buffering. So we've now added about 2 miles worth of vegetative landscaping near the residential areas to better fit the aesthetics of the area. And that vegetative screening is beyond what the ordinance requires. So that is NG coming forward with this initiative, not what the ordinance requires. We've also added some photo simulations to just better show you what the project would look like in operations and better give you a visual. So in addition to reducing the impacts, we've also increased local benefits. Since March, we were previously estimating about $20 million in tax payments. That number has increased with new legislation to more like $45+ million in tax payments over the life of the project. We have Baker Tilly here tonight to verify the property tax analysis and talk about that further. But in addition to tax payments increasing the assessed value, we're also going to commit to using some new core steel here on the project. So we have about 1.5 mile transmission line for the project that requires steel poles, and we will be using new core steel from their new facility here in Crawfordsville, which has been built in the last 2 years. We'll use steel from that facility for our project with those transmission poles. And we'll seek to use as much new core steel as we can in the project. So beyond just tax payments, we're really trying to benefit the broader community and look to use local manufacturers where we can. Rezoning guidelines. No single factor is determinative. So through the lens of the improvements that we're talking about, now we're looking at what are the guidelines we're here to talk about tonight. Well, it's number one, the character of the area. So with this improved layout and setbacks and buffering, moving some of the equipment around, the project better fits the area and better blends into the area overall. When it comes to the comprehensive plan, we'll talk about that a little bit more. The plan itself is not a ban on solar. What the plan does is it calls explicitly for careful siting of solar projects through the overlay process. With the improvements that we're going to walk through here tonight, we believe the project does honor that careful siting. The plan also seeks to balance property rights, agricultural heritage, and economic development. This project is an opportunity to advance all three of those. When it comes to a desirable use, a solar project is compatible with agricultural uses. We'll talk about some of the dual use agriculture opportunities that we're looking at with solar projects. We'll walk through that more here in a minute. But beyond that, this is a desirable use for our landowners. Just like they might choose between corn and soy in a given year, this is a decision that our project landowners have made that they feel is best for their long-term futures of their families and their farming operations, and they want to exercise that right here. When it comes to property value conservation, supported by appraisal evidence and projects that have been installed now across the country for quite some time, and looking at the evidence, there's really minimal impact when it comes to property value, particularly looking at the setback distances that we're talking about with this project. And if you see a lack of property value impact, that signals that the project can coexist with agriculture, right? When it comes to responsible development, lastly, this project brings significant assessed value increases to the county, and it does not require upfront investment from the county. This is NG bringing forth the investment to the county long-term. So now I'm going to just walk through each of these five a little bit more specifically. So when we're talking about improved fit for the surrounding area, I want to be clear with our project that we are going to commit to honoring the conditions set forth in the staff report. We are not going to expand the project footprint of where the solar panels will be located. So that is a condition for approval here tonight. We are not going to expand where the solar panels are located. That is set with our layout here with you all tonight. And if you look back to the March staff report, it clearly said that a project can coexist with the broader agricultural uses while having minimal impact on infrastructure. So we agree with that assessment. And then if you look back to when a solar ordinance was originally created in the county, I think it was back in 2020, part of what was described in that ordinance process was you create setbacks and buffer zones in an ordinance such that a project can then meet the current conditions and character. That's why you have a solar ordinance in place. That's why you have setback requirements. Our project is exceeding those to fit the character of the area. And on top of that, it's a light form of development compared to other forms of residential or commercial development. Minimal poured concrete, minimal soil disturbance, and the project can go back into row cropping at a future date if desired. So now I'm just going to briefly walk through some of the layout changes for the project. And yeah, I will walk through those when it comes to setbacks, the substation, construction, staging. So here you're looking at the layout from March. These are three different snippets of the project area with residences nearby. And then I'm going to show you the layout before you all tonight. So you can see the changes. I'll just go back and forth again here quickly. You can see how we've trimmed back panels from the residential areas. These homes now have a minimum of 2 football fields distance between themselves and the nearest solar panel. So we've taken feedback, we've increased those setbacks beyond the ordinance requirements and allowed for more setback distance there. And those areas, in many cases, will continue to be farmed in those setback areas. In addition to that, we previously had our project substation and our construction staging area. On the left-hand side, you can see where that was generally located. We've now moved those project components, so the project substation is further east. We made that smaller in size as well. And the construction staging area is more centrally located in the project. So whereas previously the closest residence was about 600 feet to the substation. It's now well over 1/3 of a mile away from the closest residence. And the construction staging yard, similarly, that distance has doubled from the closest residence. That's now about 1/3 of a mile as well. So moving these project components to minimize impact. In addition to those changes, sorry, Tom, do you mind hitting next slide for me? It seems to be freezing up. Thank you. In addition to those changes, we've added the vegetative buffers, like I mentioned. So approximately 2 miles of vegetative buffers, and you can see what that buffer would look like after about 5 years of planting, getting to maturity. It's a significant investment on NG's behalf, but one that we think is important. So here's an example looking north on 550. This photo was taken back in April, I think shortly after crops were put in the ground. And here is what it would look like with vegetative landscaping in place. So you can see this would be about 5 years after installation. The vegetative buffering helps blend the project in aesthetically. Here's another example. If you look east on 150, and then after, you can see that row of trees blends in with the row of trees behind it much better, and allows the project to blend in here as well. So beyond that, and when we're talking about the comprehensive plan, I just wanted to note a couple things. As I mentioned previously, the plan does not ban solar. It's looking at careful siting of solar. We did verify with the firm that put together the survey for the comprehensive plan. It was about 53% of people agreed with the undesirable list where solar was placed on the comprehensive plan survey. Solar was also bunched with things like hazardous waste dumps and other toxic facilities. People who were filling out the survey didn't have the ability to individually select solar as something that they would want desirable apart from that list. So if you think it was only a minor majority that at 53% said that that list was undesirable, if they had been able to select solar individually, it's reasonable to think that solar then would have been considered favorable and not undesirable. It was bunched with other undesirable uses, and it was just a slim majority that ended up voting for that. And overall, the comprehensive plan, it seeks to balance property rights, preserve agricultural roots, responsible economic development. Those are some of the core tenets of the comprehensive plan overall, and a project like this can advance all three. Appropriate agricultural land use in terms of desirable use here. I think it's just important to note that the process we're going through here tonight is the agricultural overlay rezoning. That process in and of itself, it has agriculture in the name. That is an acknowledgement that agricultural activities can continue on any land that has a solar overlay rezoning here. So that in and of itself shows that both solar and agriculture can coexist, and we're looking at opportunities for that throughout our operational projects. So, in terms of dual use land uses when it comes to solar and agriculture, we're looking at sheep grazing, honey production with our pollinators, and baling hay. All of those are possible uses that we can continue to incorporate agriculture with the project once it's operational. And the setback areas, like I mentioned, 2 football fields, that will continue to be farmed as well. And in terms of desirable use, once again, this is safeguarding our landowner rights. This is something that our landowners deem desirable for their future farming operations and for their families. And even when the solar ordinance was created back in 2020, it explicitly said that this is an opportunity for landowners to maximize income on their agricultural land. It's a desirable use for landowners to shore up their operations for the long term. Just wanted to briefly touch on, once again, our vegetative ground cover for our projects that we take very seriously. We're continually improving the processes behind that. Ultimately, a project like this will have a dense vegetative ground cover, not only to keep weeds down, but to help keep the soil in place and keep that soil healthy if it does so desire to go back into row cropping in the future. So Purdue talks about some of the best practices when it comes to ag operations. maximizing the continuous living roots, minimizing disturbance, maximizing soil cover, and maximizing biodiversity. This ground cover with its pollinator value will allow the land to do all four of those things and really help keep that soil thriving and in place for the duration of the project. When it comes to property values, like we said, there's been appraisal studies that have looked at this across the country. Ultimately, there has been, for the most part, minimal impact found when it comes to these projects, particularly when we're talking about the setback distance that we're looking at. A solar project does not emit any harmful chemicals or anything that would be associated with a reduction in property values. And so a solar project in and of itself with no major impact to property values, that means it can coexist and exist with the landscape today. Responsible development and the lasting benefits that comes from a project like this. So as we mentioned, the improved assessed value outlook, we're looking at $45+ million in tax payments over the life of the project. And beyond that, pressure, which helps put lower tax rates over time. In addition to that, we're also looking to support local economic growth. So like I said, using new core steel in the project, seeking to hire local workers when possible, local contractors, and this does not require upfront investment from the county. It's a unique economic development opportunity in that sense. And in addition, it's coming at a time when Indiana has growing electricity needs. There is a lot more development going on in the state. This is an opportunity to put a project on the grid that can power roughly 40,000 homes and will overall help the state meet the growing electricity demand that we see today. Briefly, just wanted to touch on once again, ENGIE, our experience, accountability. We have an operational project in Indiana, one under construction. We're a long-term owner-operator mindset. We've been in business for well over 100 years. We'll have a full-time O&M staff on site with the project. And we're a safety-first culture. That's in our DNA. So we've had conversations with the Crawfordsville Fire Department here in the past couple of months. We've answered their preliminary questions. A project like this really has minimal risk overall, and we'll continue to develop those relationships with first responders to make sure that we're going to be operating a very safe and reliable project for the county. So in terms of project advisors, I did mention at the start, the folks that are here with us tonight, you have the list in front of you as well. I just want to make sure you had these names in front of you in case you want to ask any direct questions to these folks and their areas of expertise. So all in all, just to go over the guidelines one more time, no single factor is determinative. We believe the project meets all 5 requirements, and we also accept the staff report's conditions for approval. So we accept what the staff has put forth in terms of what would be recommended for approval. We are okay with those conditions. And with the improvements that we've made to the project here in the last couple of months, we firmly believe the project fits the character of the area with the increased setbacks and the buffering. In terms of the comprehensive plan, it's a way to advance all 3 of some of the major tenets of the comprehensive plan. It's a desirable use for our landowners. It's compatible with current agriculture when it comes to dual use opportunities. There's no evidence of decreased property values in what we've looked at. We don't see those impacts. And so a project can coexist with agriculture. And when it comes to responsible development overall, this is an opportunity for sustainable, responsible development for the county. No upfront investment and ENGIE bringing forth significant tax dollars to the county. So with that, I know it's a lot of information. I just want to say I really appreciate your time here tonight. And we look forward to answering any questions that you might have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom. Does the board have any questions for Tom?
I have a question. My name's Steve Canfield. The $45 million figure that's projected over the life of it at 30 years, How much of that can we project that Montgomery County would actually get?
Sure. I can bring up Greg Balsano here
Yeah,
from,
he was the one
from
I was
Baker
thinking
Tilly
of,
as
yeah.
well. Yeah.
Yeah,
But we'll speak to some of the efforts that we would put forth in an economic development agreement to make sure that that dollar amount would be stabilized for the county and reduce uncertainty.
okay,
But yeah, Greg, if you want to come up, I'll let Greg speak to that briefly as well.
thank you.
Hello, sir. Greg Balsano, Baker Tilly Municipal Advisors. I apologize, I couldn't hear the last part of your question. I heard the 45 million.
I wanted to know how much of that 45 million is projected to actually come back to Montgomery County?
Gotcha. Yes, sir. So I understand that question. So you are right that in the state of Indiana, property taxes are constrained by the maximum levy set by the state. So every year, all taxing units, including the county, are constrained by that maximum levy for the most part. So for example, for 2027, that growth quotient is 6%. What that means is you're able to grow your levy by 6% for the next year at a maximum rate. And what that really means is that higher assessed value results in lower tax rates, right? So assessed value is a driver of tax rates. That $45 million isn't necessarily new dollars to the county. It's an increase in assessed value that can go to offset what other folks are paying in the area. And so to your question about how much new money does that actually mean for the county, there's a couple pieces to that. One, the property tax payments, again, can offset that so the other folks are paying less in taxes than they otherwise would have. While that's not new dollars, that is one of the benefits. Another piece of that is the assessed value can go to help tax credits that are in place. And so what I mean by that is in the state of Indiana, we're also constrained by certain different types of taxpayers can only pay so much in taxes, 1% for homestead properties, 2% for agricultural and rental residential properties, and 3% for commercial industrial. Meaning that if your tax rate's over one of those thresholds, you now have credits where you cannot collect your full levy. So with that, meaning that additional assessed value, if it lowers tax rates, that can thus reduce tax credits that you guys are seeing, city is seeing, schools are seeing, that can help offset some of those losses, right? So, we did do an estimate of what those impacts could be, and we saw that, assuming that all of that assessed value comes into the tax base, it could be a difference of a little over $100,000 a year in tax credit changes, from what it would have been otherwise without the increase in assessed value. I do want to note, though, that economic development payments, if you've ever heard of that term, and other projects throughout the state, that is direct new dollars to the county. Those are negotiated payments that are in the form of an economic development agreement that we often see. And that economic development agreement is something that in talking with NG, it sounds like that they are open to discussing if it goes forward and open to discussing having the economic development payments come straight to the county, which those payments, if negotiated and happened, would be new dollars directly to the county. And just touching on the reduction in tax rate, that could mean, for example, for someone in the Madison Township taxing district where this project is located, holding everything else constant, just looking at this new assessed value inputted into the tax base, that can mean a reduction of a little over $100 a year in someone who owns a home that is $200,000 of assessed value. So I did want to note that, and it is important to diversify assessed value, have different types of assessed value within the tax base, just for diversification purposes, commercial, industrial, residential, different types of things like that. So wanted to note that as well.
Okay. Thank you, Greg.
Yeah, yes, sir.
I do have another question. I'm not sure if you'll be the one to answer it or not. You guys are going to be, if we approve all this, you guys will be generating electricity. How much of that electricity is Montgomery County going to benefit from? Looks to me like it's going to be going to Chicago, New York, how will we know, or will we know if we're getting any benefits? Would it result in any lower rates on our electric bill?
Thank you for that question. So, the grid is it's a large, complex machine, right? So we generate electricity in one place, it flows onto the grid, and it's used wherever there's most demand at that given moment. So to answer your question, it's not as though it's you can track exactly where electron is produced at the facility and where it's consumed. What it does do is it helps stabilize and support the grid regionally. And so it's being consumed more regionally rather than being shipped and then being consumed somewhere else. But to be clear, the main benefit for Montgomery County residents and the broader county is the economic development. So this is an opportunity to have this investment come into the county. The county itself, to my knowledge, doesn't necessarily procure electricity on behalf of all of its residents.
Right.
So the power goes onto the grid, but the main benefit for folks is the economic development that is coming into the county.
Tom, I have a few questions.
Sure.
So we have some solar projects close. We've got one east of us and one west in adjoining counties of industrial solar. The elected officials I spoke with, there's a few questions that they thought was pertinent. That
Sure.
will any topsoil be removed through the installation of this project?
Yeah, it's a great question. We will not be removing any topsoil from the project area. So if there's any topsoil that needs to be moved, say for the creation of the substation, that topsoil stays on site and is then used on site. But we're not shipping away topsoil anywhere. It's staying on the project site. I think when we looked at the 825 acres of project area, I think it was less than 75 acres that required some kind of grading or earth moving. So out of that 800, a fairly small amount, but that earth moving, all of that soil that is used for the grading to level is put right back in place on the site. So we're not shipping topsoil away from the site.
So then reclamation, is that Copper Box's responsibility or is that property owners?
Are you talking about at the end of the project
Right.
lifespan? That falls on Copper Box and NG. So we have that written into our lease contracts with the landowners, and then we'd enter into a decommissioning agreement with the county as well. And as Tom mentioned, that involves a letter of credit for the full decommissioning amount that Copper Box would be posting for the county.
Thank you. Is there going to be any subsoil drainage disturbance?
Did you say subsoil drainage?
Yeah, just tile
yeah.
county mains.
Yeah, we throughout our experience in working with Indiana, we understand how important drain tiles are, right? And so part of our process is going out and doing a full field survey of existing tile, understanding where those are located, and oftentimes we'll add some additional tile that will help benefit the project. But overall, NG is responsible for drainage of the site. We have to keep the project draining properly, and we have to make sure we're not impacting neighbors with drainage. So that's in our best interest to operate a dry site, and we will account for that when it comes to the pre-planning engineering by looking at tile that's already out there.
Thank you.
How long have you done this type of work, your company?
Yeah, good question. Our company, NG, has been developing renewable energy projects in the U.S. for, I believe, about 15 years or so. The company itself is well over 100 years old, and we've been in the U.S. since I think for about 50 years. Headquarters in Houston. We have a Chicago office as well.
Okay. Have you ever done a decommissioning of a project? I mean, shut it down. Its life was over and you had to change it back.
Yeah, I think, there may be an example in Europe from a while ago when it was going on, but obviously our U.S. installations are more recent. So we have not gotten to that point yet, but we do ensure our projects have a full decommissioning plan in place as a backstop for the county.
And how is that financed?
Through the letter of credit that we'll be posting to the county, that decommissioning plan. That's the financial backstop for the county.
Okay.
Your company stated that property values, it shows that there's no impact is that based on high-density housing or in an ag region like we're describing?
Yeah, good question. The study we looked at mostly was looking at projects built in the Midwest in agricultural areas, but I might call up the author of that study, Rich Kirkland, if you don't mind, and maybe
Yeah,
answer that in a little more detail, if that's okay.
So, yeah, good evening. We've looked at, to answer again, Rich Kirkland Appraisals. I'm state certified in Indiana and about 17 other states. I'm an MAI and an ARA through the American Society of Farm Managers and Rural Appraisers. We've been looking at solar projects for 18 years. We've looked at about 26 states now. We've been pulling data. We've looked at areas where there is subdivision activity next to solar projects. We're also looking at rural sales. In the report, I know it's been submitted, I would just direct your attention mostly to the sale-resale analysis, which is the first set that we talk about. Sale-resale is very straightforward, and it's really what any property owner should be concerned about. We've looked at a home sale that's happened, and we've looked at rural sites as well as in subdivisions. But if you look at a home sale after a solar project's been built and in place, we go back in time and look at an earlier sale of that exact same home before the solar farm was announced, and we just link that to the FHFA Home Price Index. Did the older sale appreciate to a price similar to what it actually sold for? And we are consistently finding the data on the sale-resale analysis that the projects are appreciating right on target with that, and slightly, we're finding on average about a +1%, meaning that they're selling for slightly more, but that's within standard market imperfections. We don't think that's an enhancement, we just see that as a neutral factor. But again, sale-resale, that's in there, and we've done a lot of other types of research on this, and I would just direct your attention to the most recent published study that I'm aware of. It's published by the Appraisal Institute in the Appraisal Journal. They looked at a number of solar projects in Texas, looked at home sales around them. They found no impact on property value, but more importantly than that, they also interviewed the brokers who sold them, and the brokers confirmed that they weren't, while the data was not showing any impact, the brokers confirmed they weren't getting any pushback from that either, that they weren't seeing any impacts.
Thank you. Does the board have any other questions?
Yeah, I'll give you an easy one. Vegetation management. You know, you stayed in there several times about very little use of herbicides, that type thing, especially comparing it to agricultural, and then flip back a few pages, and then all of a sudden, there's quite a bit on herbicide use and that type of thing. So I guess, what's the plan to keep invasive plants and invasive species from being a problem around the outer edges, underneath the panels, that type of thing?
Yeah, that's a great question. So Plan A is to make sure that we have a very robust ground cover that helps choke out weeds. So how we're doing that, we're not going to wait until after the project is built to try to get in between these panel rows and seed after that. What we do, and we've learned that this is the best way to do it, is to actually go out there in the appropriate seeding windows and seed the site before construction starts at all. So making sure that you're getting that seed in the ground as soon as possible, and then following the guidelines set forth in the vegetation management plan. That also requires occasional mowing, you know, a little bit more frequently in the first couple of years to keep weed pressure down. But eventually there might be the need for some spot treatment, right, of problem weeds that arise. But goal A is to make sure we have a very dense ground cover in the first place to help choke out those weeds and suppress them overall.
And with that, you state there'll be a staff person, vegetation staff person. Is that someone local? Is that someone from another part of the country? Because when you get into the Corn Belt, when you get into this area, I mean, it's very prolific, high organic matter soils, right? And that's why corn is raised there for a lot. But that's my question, is it someone that's really going to be comparable and be able to understand how quickly these invasive plants could get out of hand too, with weather like we have?
For sure. Well, the full-time O&M staff will be there to monitor how the site is performing from a vegetation perspective. They themselves will not be performing all of that work. We'll look for ideally somebody local contractors who have the best knowledge, but we'll look for contractors to help actually perform that ongoing maintenance work. I did just, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just back to the earlier point on the EDA and the tax payments. I did just forget to mention that as part of an economic development agreement, what we would seek to do with the county is to establish that depreciation floor, which was reinstated back in March, which is why you're seeing that raise of increase in property tax payments. So to remove the risk of that being removed again at a later date, we would codify that in EDA language so that the county could rely on those numbers moving forward with the tax payments.
Would that agreement be through NG or Copper Box?
That agreement would be through Copperbox Solar directly with the county, but Copperbox Solar is, in a direct line with all of NG's parent companies.
Thanks, Tom. A couple of questions here. So you've made a number of changes to your plan. I appreciate you going through those. Have you had an opportunity to talk to the neighbors to see how they feel about those changes?
I've had the opportunity to speak to a couple of the neighbors. I have made some efforts to speak to others and did not get responses in some instances. So I wish I could have spoken with each and every one of the 10 residences. But I did have a couple of conversations with neighbors, and I know that the changes that we did make were appreciated in those instances.
Okay. A couple of questions about the equipment. I'm trying to sort through. The equipment, what's the equipment called that actually sends it to the grid?
A substation?
Yeah, is that your substation
Correct.
transformer?
There's a transformer within the substation. It's part of the substation is the transformer, but the substation is the electrical equipment that puts the electricity onto the grid.
Yeah. I didn't see anything in your information that talked about that location or the equipment.
So the substation itself, if you saw on the plan where I showed where that new location would be, and then there's the switch yard, which is further west. So
Right.
that's where our transmission line connects and puts the power onto that existing Duke line.
Okay, the switch yard. I didn't
The
see
switch
any-
yard,
I didn't
yeah.
see anything
So
about it.
the footprint, we designated where the footprint would be of that. That would be a Duke-owned facility because they're going to own that switch yard that puts the power onto their grid.
So what kind of equipment is located there?
Your standard substation equipment that you see across the Indiana grid.
Yeah, okay. Because what I was trying to understand, I mean, I spent some time on the sound analysis, and it mentions the substation transformer is raw data, 103 decibels, I believe, based on, and so that would be located with your other equipment that you moved farther east?
That would be correct. That would be in the substation that we moved further east, which
Yes.
we accounted for in the analysis and shifted further away from homes, correct?
Yeah. Because I was just trying to understand the sound levels. And so for me, I researched what's 103 decibels, and I don't know if you can give an example of that.
So to be clear, that's if you're 1 foot away.
Yes.
The requirements are from property lines and looking at where residences are. So when you factor in over 1/3 of a mile away from that,
I understand the
Yeah.
weighted average.
yeah.
So there's A and there's C, but yes.
So we're modeling a 35 decibel level then from neighboring residences as part of our study, and that's essentially a whisper quiet level.
I guess what caught me was I did a little research on what is 103 decibels, just to understand what the raw data is. And what was referenced was chainsaw. And I understand the transformer, will that run 24/7? Or does,
The transformer itself, I'd have to get back to you. I mean, I know for a fact when power's being produced, that is when you'll see the maximum output of noise.
yes,
In nighttime, when there's not as much power as produced, I would assume that level is lower.
right, okay.
But to be clear, that level of sound you're talking about is not what would be perceived from property lines and from homes. That's directly next to the transformer.
Yep.
Excuse me, Steve, is that the inverter?
No, that's the substation transformer.
Yeah, inverters are 89 decibels at location.
Yeah,
I didn't write the report, but I may be able to clear some of that up.
yeah, I will defer to our health and safety experts, and Tommy, if you want to go ahead.
Yeah, Tommy Cleveland, I wrote the health and safety report that touched on sound, but I didn't prepare that specific sound report, but I reviewed it, and I'm very familiar with sound engineering. And the report explains there's a difference between sound power levels and sound pressure levels. They're both decibels, but the 103 you're referring to is a sound power level, and it's not comparable to a sound pressure level, which is what we normally think of as a sound level. So that chainsaw value you looked up is a sound pressure level at some certain distance, and you can't directly compare that to a sound pressure level, sound power level. It's a bit hard to explain. There's not a real clear analogy for it, but that is covered in the report to explain the difference between those two values and that they're not comparable. That substation transformer is nowhere near as loud as a chainsaw. I mean, you've probably driven by substations that have large transformers in them and don't hear them. They're not nearly as loud as a chainsaw. And those values that are in the report are peak sound values, so that would be at full power in warmer conditions when the cooling system's running at full power. At nighttime or less than the warmer conditions, it would be dramatically less loud than that. At nighttime, it's almost silent.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Tommy, I think this is for you, right here.
There you go.
Yeah, I have a question. Transformers, my experience, they have cooling oil in the transformer.
Yes, sir.
Who is going to be responsible for that cooling oil? Is that Duke? Is that you guys? And what kind of a plan do you have in case one of them would rupture? Where would that oil go? How would you do a cleanup?
I could touch on a little bit of that. I'm probably not fully the correct person for that. But
Okay.
The
well,
oil,
that's
the oil is
still,
in the.
still my question.
Okay.
Yeah.
In the transformer, which is owned by the project, not part of the Duke switching station, but it will be owned by a copper box, so they'd be responsible for it. And because of the size, EPA requirements would require a full containment area under that transformer. So
Okay. Well,
if it were to leak, there's a containment area.
it will be diked, so they won't be able to get away.
Correct, in some form of dike or a pit, but there's multiple designs.
Okay. And but copper would be responsible for that then?
Yes,
Okay. All right.
yeah, I can answer those portions. I think you had some other pieces.
Well, and then will you guys help train our local emergency people for if there isn't rupture and something escapes?
I know that's the plan, but you should probably hear that from Tom.
Okay, well, I'll ask whoever will answer.
Sure, we will. It's part of our standard operating procedure to have annual trainings with first responders. But, you see substations operating all over the state on a day-to-day basis. It's part of our electrical grid.
Right.
We understand those risks. They're fairly minimal, and they're operated through the project O&M staff that will be there on site.
Yeah. But I'm living in Montgomery County. I am aware in the past of some things where Duke Energy had some equipment failures. And in that, they had some liquids get away. So I want to know that we've got, if you guys are successful here, that you guys have your able to handle anything that could come up.
Understood. We'll have detailed plans with first responders at the county. We'll have a full-time operations staff, like I mentioned, and they'll have the annual trainings with them to make sure that all of our bases are covered.
How many operations staff do you figure will be on this project?
I think probably with site techs around 4 or 5.
Okay. Okay. Okay, that's my question for now, so.
Hey, Tom, could you explain everything to the west that's in purple, that there's no solar?
Yeah.
So what's the use of that? Is that being zoned? If so, what for and why, I guess?
It's a great clarifying question. Yeah, thank you. So where you don't see panels, but you see purple there, that was required to be rezoned because we have that 1.5 mile project transmission line that goes west. So that is where that transmission line goes directly west, and then it connects onto the Duke line that exists there already. So you will not have any panels in those purple areas, but we did need to rezone those to allow for our transmission line that will head west for the project.
So would that be along a road, or is that going through the fields in, that transmission line?
It is, it's following those property lines. There's kind of some natural features back there already, shrubs, but it's following those property lines where we have agreements there already, and that line would go through those fields directly west.
And then where's the Duke switch station at then?
The Duke switch station is, if you see those two, it's shown in the project layout, but it's kind of, Tom, if you were to put your cursor at the southeast corner of that northwesternmost parcel there, right around there where Tom's cursor is,
Oh, okay.
in that section of those two parcels right there.
So you'd be building a new switch station? Substation
Duke
there?
would be building that new switch yard. NG actually pays all the funds required for that new switch yard. That's an NG investment, but Duke builds that because they need to own that operating substation.
Yeah, thank you.
And that substation is what, 12 acres or so, 15? It's pretty good size.
It's, that's, Duke typically likes to have a little extra land than they need in terms of what the option footprint is. When it's all said and done, the substation itself will be less than 10 acres.
So why wasn't any of that information included here? Because we're rezoning that piece.
In our project layout, we did show the transmission line that goes west to
Yeah,
that
but you didn't show
substation.
the switch station.
We apologize for that. I'm glad we could clear that up for you.
And I didn't see
Tonight.
anything in there regarding the equipment.
We did show the footprint
Showed
clearly.
the footprint, but that's it, you know? That was it.
Yeah, I guess by showing the footprint, we're signaling where that switch yard, but we're happy to provide more details on that.
Okay, thanks.
So then there's another switch yard to the east, correct? Is
That
that where
is
that
what-
dash is?
That, not the dash there. You can see it on the layout. It's where we had on the slide deck, east of where we were. So if you take Tom's cursor, it's kind of like right in the north center part of the project. It's only about 2 acres, and that collects all the power from our project. That's called the collector substation. That's what Copperbox owns. Then your transmission line starts from that and goes to the Duke switchyard.
Okay.
Any other questions for Tom at this time? Thanks, Tom. At this time, we will move to our public hearing. For the hearing, this is not a question and answer. This is your chance to be heard. Please address the board, not the petitioner. Make sure you use the mic. And please respect the time, please 5 minutes or less. And be sure to state your name and address. So, at 5 o'clock, the public hearing's open.
Hey guys, John Fry, 1272 North, 425 East, Crawfordsville. I've been here from the start with you guys, sat on that side of the desk for the last 8 years. You know, this process is not difficult. It's not to be emotional. Many people, I'm sure, will talk about emotional reasons tonight, but you will not make your decision on that. Stick to the 5 factors the staff has suggested to you. You know, the comprehensive plan was a very, very extensive process. Months and months and months. We refresh that after 5 years because things do change, you know. We're not here to debate what the comprehensive plan says tonight. If you want to do that, you'll refresh the comprehensive plan again sometime. Talk about, you know, the top 5 things that people did not want in this community. It was very clear. I absolutely do not remember any percentage of 53% or any percentage, actually. It was the top 5 things that people did not want in this community, and this was one of them. Talk about tax revenue and reducing people's taxes. Comp plan says quality job creation. Comp plan says increase our population. You'll do more to reduce people's taxes, growing our community, than a project that doesn't create high-quality jobs ever will. Comp plan says try to keep our county an ag community. You know, your staff's report is pretty adamant about that. As a commissioner as well as a farmer, I always weigh job creation and development against the loss of our productive farmland. This project is on some of the best productive farm ground Montgomery County has. Our ag community is, I don't say suffering, but we're in a down cycle right now. You know, this project's not going to benefit the ag community. Just a handful will benefit. In fact, I think you should consider how an influx of cash into just a few hands can negatively affect cash rents for everyone else that's not participating in this project, cause and effect. So I do appreciate the questions you guys asked tonight and your service for this community, and thank you for everything you're doing.
Hi, my name is Fred Mills, and I live in Mooresville, Indiana. But my family owns, and my brothers own quite a bit of ground on 231 south of Crawfordsville. I am not here to talk about all the different details. You've heard all the benefits, that kind of thing that solar brings. But I do want to talk about something else, and that's change. There's 2 constants in the world, and that's time and change. Time never stops, change always keeps happening. In this community, and with, you've always had that agricultural background, but I would argue that you are even more so a community of energy. 45% of the corn, 20% of soybeans now goes directly into ethanol. You guys, or some previous members, got out far enough to allow the ethanol plant. And that, it is now what drives agricultural prices, is ethanol. It's not grown corn for, for the pigs or the chickens or that kind of thing. Although 20% is still there, it's all driven by a product that is going to be decreasing over the next 10 or 15 years. And so as a community, you have to start thinking about, well, what are we going to replace that with? That is something that we have done at my family, and that's what a lot of farmers are looking at. Where are we going to get our next revenue from? Where are we going to sell that product? Solar provides that bridge for communities for individual farm owners to be able to make that change that's going to occur in this world. It provides an opportunity for them to have income. It provides them the opportunity to maintain ownership of the property. It is something that is coming, and so you got to figure out how you can change with that. Landowners are trying to figure out how they can continue to prosper, how they can get the most revenue out of their ground. And this is one of many options that we're going to have to look at as the agricultural world changes. So I would encourage you to be open to this kind of change. It is something that does bring benefit to a community. It definitely brings benefit to the landowners who are part of this process. Your county is not going to disappear in terms of its agricultural presence, but it is going to have to change with the change in time. So I would encourage you, as you have in the past, Montgomery County has been one that's been willing to look at change. And I said something earlier, who would have thought to say you wanted to bring a steel plant to a community? And I'm sure those first conversations were quite aggressive. But today, that is something that is a stalwart of your community, the New Corp. And they did it in the right way. Solar can do the same thing for communities, and I encourage you to approve this project. Thank you.
Hi again. Thank you for the concerns you raised. I think there's some serious issues that each one
Please
of you
state,
touched on.
please state your name
Sorry,
and
Josh
address.
Brewer, 3270 West Wellington Boulevard. Rural born and raised on a dirt road, not a gravel road. So if you want to know about agricultural or rural character, I'm kind of one. One of those objections was about the agricultural character of the county and the surrounding areas. I did the math on the revised numbers, and these panels would cover 0.3% of the county. Copper box cannot change the rural and agricultural character of this county. The current proposed size is reasonable, and we will not change from a proud farming community because of it. With all due respect to people who were involved in the comprehensive plan in the past, there was a deeply flawed process that led to that 53% number, which is an actual number. I know other people are going to speak to that as well. I had a heating bill of $500 this winter. What are our local solutions to that? Well, there's only a few, right? There's only a few things that we can actually do in our county to help bring down energy production. We should not have to deal with unstable foreign countries and fight wars over fossil fuels. We shouldn't even have to ship coal from Kentucky. We have our own local rural solutions, and they're already working. In fact, it's also an agricultural solution to our problems. As you learned here, crops can be more diverse than corn and soybeans. Pollinators and diverse plantings in the setbacks, along with the possibility of grazing beneath those panels, these are in keeping with our agricultural origins and our goals. We get to keep our heritage and look to the future. $45 million is a lot. That's double. That's more than double. It's a significant amount of money while we're dealing with significant funding cuts from other sources. Copper Box represents a generous, consistent revenue source for many years to come. They make money, we get our tax base improved, it's a win-win. I was appointed by the county commissioners to the library board. Copper Box stepped up to put solar panels on the top of that library. All of our taxpayers will benefit from that project for years to come, but the percentage of benefit will be much greater with the size of this project. And so I'm grateful for that. Thank you. And on behalf of all taxpayers, thank you. The most important principle at stake is freedom. Farmers and landowners should be free to use their land without being told what to do. Within reason, they must demonstrate they will not harm the rest of us. Copper Box and local owners have now demonstrated that thoroughly. If you don't want solar panels on your land, don't put them on your land. All farmers should be free to develop their land as they choose. Small government either gets out of the way of economic development and technological change, or it actively promotes it, and I argue you could do both. Intelligent lawmakers change their mind when presented with new evidence. You can too. Valid concerns have been addressed. Reasonable compromises have been made. New evidence requires a new decision. Approve the application. Thank you.
Hello, I am Tony Ridgway Woodall, and my address is 2975 West, 950 South, Waveland, and I've been coming to your meetings for a while, and I've missed a lot of work to make sure that we care about the people and care about our land and stick to the plans that we're trying to do. At some point, some county in Indiana has to stick to tradition while the others are moving forward. I want to bring out a few facts. Unlike state with stricter public utility definitions or mandates that impact transparency, Indiana codes allow broad utility power without requiring proof that the new infrastructure benefits general taxpayers. They put this on our county to decide because we may or may not know. And so our laws aren't there to protect us at the moment from our states. We are in a moderate protection in that. We are not the best. One of the worst places for citizen protection is Texas, which is the headquarter of Engine, which is was established in 2015 through the multiple groups coming together, and if you trace the money back, it's owned by the French government. So every time that our federal government is allowing the tax dollars to be put toward this, it's going to France. So with that being said, also, currently our president's agenda is to construct AI data centers. If you change this from agricultural to AO, I believe was the term, you are opening the pathway for those data centers. Our county is being noticed because if you look at, maps of solar panels, flock cameras, voting ranges, everything, we have a little bit of an open area and it's enticing to everyone. So this isn't going to be the last company that comes, it's one of the first. To give you perspective on the dangers of solar in our community, I live in the southern region where they're snapping off poles all the time from our weather. So in 2026, March 10th of this year, an EF1 tornado hit Dunn's Bridge in Wheatfield, Indiana, destroying roughly 2.4 million solar panels stretched across 2 counties. And I really don't think we want to do that since we're already battling a lot of other things. I appreciate that you put effort into the people of this community. They're fascinating and interesting. I've lived here for 6 years, and this rural agricultural life is the reason I came. I work at your public library. I help your children and your family members, and they come in and they do research. And I have a lot of people who come who really don't want to see industrialization of the land. They want to see opportunities, they want to see jobs, they want to see families. And if it's not places for families, it's places for fields that should grow food, because we can live in the dark, but we cannot live without food. Some county in the state has to feed everyone. And if you put all the electricity up for AI to come in, then it's going to take that opportunity away from us to have that. I don't have a big plot of land where I live. I live in an area where someone has scooped up land and all these grafts in order to have the masses, and they took out all the different, trees and the barriers, and my trees are constantly being poisoned, and there's battles, but I'd rather have that than these panels. I come from a farm family. I am 8th generation farmer, and it matters to me. I grew up in the county next to here, but I chose to make this my county to live in and to work in and to take care of the people around me as well as my own family. So I hope that you consider, not from the heartstrings, I'm not trying to get your heart, I'm just talking to you really from me. Like, this is important to me for a lot of reasons, and I see a lot of people around me are hurting. And I'm not against solar. There are non-toxic solar panels that will wrap around every telephone pole, but the utility company cannot make money off of it. They don't use taxpayer dollars for that. It won't make a profit for France. Like, it will. Those are the things that help us individually where we could still be sustainable. So I'd rather have that tax dollar by every person in this room, a non-toxic panel for themselves versus an industrialized taking over the fields, taking away the lifestyle we already have and appreciate. Thank you for listening to me, and thank you for doing this job. It's a really hard job, so I appreciate all your efforts. I am a researcher, and I can give you citations to anything I have said, and I have the degrees to back it up. So please contact me. I'm sure you already have my email, because I'm sure I've emailed you guys before. Please reach out, and I'll give you all the information that I have to share. Thank you very much.
Hello. I think I better lower the woo. I think I did something wrong. There. Can you all hear me? Okay. My name is Nancy Grimes. I live at 8865 South, 225 West, Crawfordsville, Indiana. First of all, I thought this had been settled on March 31st of 2026. As far as I can tell, the prime reason Copperbox has submitted their application is that the Indiana governor, Mike Braun, on March 12th, 2026, reinstated a tax depreciation for clean energy products in Indiana. What I also didn't realize that included in this is 2,620 acres that are going to be rezoned as overlay. The overlay acreage, and this will allow not only Copperbox, but any other solar company that wants to come in and also use these acres. The Secretary of Agriculture, Brooke Rollins, has stated that the USDA will no longer support installation of solar and wind projects on productive farmland. She also says that it is one of the largest barriers of entry for new and young farmers. It makes farmland more expensive and less available. People who live adjacent to these solar panels are greatly distressed since they have no say in their installation, and also, contrary to what's been stated, will also suffer great loss of their property values. Installation of solar panels on prime 890 acres or 900 acres of valuable Montgomery County farmland is a crime against nature. Once farmland is covered in concrete and solar panels, it is gone forever. They stated that after their 30-year lease is done, the farmland can be put back into production. It is supposed to be good as new. This land can never be reclaimed and farmed again, no matter what Copperbox claims. This is a complete falsehood. They also claim that the energy produced will stay local, and that's not true. These people are the salesmen. Another group's going to come in and actually work with the installation, and these new people can come in and lower the lease rate, and the landowners really have no recourse. Because of the growth of the world's population and the lack or of additional farmland, more food, soybean oil, gas, and many other agricultural products will be lost for both people and livestock. The installation of these solar panels interferes with our valuable water tables. They are affected not only in the installation area, but in many areas near and far from the installation. These solar panels cause a complete loss of bird, insect, and animal habitat, no matter what Copperbox says. The space planted is of little value. What they don't tell you is that the area over these solar panels and around it is at least 100 degrees hotter than the ambient temperature. The picture of sheep was cute, but I doubt if any of them have ever worked with sheep. And where is their water going to come from? We have frequent wind and hailstorms, as the lady has said before me. The representative from Copperbox stated that hailstorms would not damage their solar panels. This destruction of solar panels in our adjacent counties around the March 12th date of 2026 proved this to be false. Solar panels can catch fire. This would be catastrophic for the solar fields, but would cause terrible fire damage to adjacent farmland. Our local volunteer fire departments, along with Crawfordsville, do not have the ability, training, or equipment to fight these solar fires. Copperbox stated that they would provide training, but they did not mention any concrete evidence of how they plan to fight any possible fires in our area, and if they would foot the cost. It is a nightmare to go between fences, lights, and panels to fight these fires. Our fire departments do not have the acquired equipment to do so, and the cost is prohibitive. The USDA announced that it will no longer support solar or wind farms on productive farm ground or allow solar panels manufactured by foreign adversaries to be used in the USDA-funded projects. These solar panels are made in China, and they're only 20 to 30% effective. And most of all, my late husband, Larry Grimes, who farmed for over 40 years, always said, God doesn't make farm ground anymore. Thank you.
Hello, my name is John Smiley. I reside at 1014 West Main Street in Crawfordsville, and I speak on behalf of myself and the League of Women Voters of Montgomery County, where I serve as a board member. We are in support of the rezoning for the Copperbox Solar Project because it brings the following benefits: greater property rights and income for landowners, county revenue, which is now $45 million, jobs and investment, more on this later, and local ecosystem benefits through the introduction of native plants and the increased pollinator and avian biodiversity that will follow, as has been seen in projects such as in Minnesota. As a bonus, we can be proud contributors to the clean electricity supply, helping our region, nation, and planet by tamping down rising electric rates and reducing the negative impacts of additional fossil fuel burning, including air pollution, coal ash, and climate change. As to whether the comprehensive plan is aligned with solar, I find on 8 out of 9 points it is. The guiding principle number 1, growth opportunities. Direct investments in critical infrastructure to support growth. Electrical generation is critical infrastructure now more than ever, and we have people willing to pay us money to build it. Guiding principle number 2, economic prosperity. Quote, leverage key assets and regional advantage to create economic opportunities. We have accessible transmission lines, open land, and landowners eager to seize this opportunity. Furthermore, employers, as we have already seen with Tempur Sealy, are attracted to clean energy. Economic research from Ball State shows Indiana counties with restrictions on utility-scale solar forfeited more than 8,500 potential jobs and $83 million in manufacturing investment between 2001 and 2021. Guiding principle number 3, community well-being. Montgomery County is 20 miles downwind of the Cayuga coal plant. Children living near coal plants have twice the rate of asthma. Crop yields downwind of a coal plant can be suppressed by as much as 10%, and while the effect wanes with distance, it can be measurably detected for over 60 miles. Indiana has the most polluted waterways in the nation, and coal ash is a big part of it. We will never have the best well-being that we can or live up to our agricultural heritage as well as we can with coal in the energy mix, and we won't retire coal without welcoming clean alternatives. Guiding principle number 4, natural resource protection. Quote, prioritize policies that consider future viability alongside preservation efforts. Besides future viability being what clean, limitless energy is all about, even the ground directly beneath the solar panels will be preserved for future farming better than if it were farmed continuously. The Federal Conservation Resource Program pays landowners to take land out of active production and, quote, establish long-term resource-conserving vegetative covers, which, quote, helps to improve water quality, control soil erosion, and enhance wildlife habitat. The Copperbox Native Plants Plan delivers the same thing, but while generating private dollars rather than consuming public ones. The comprehensive plan does list solar farms as an undesirable land use. While the League and I both disagree with this designation for a handful of reasons. First, as shown, they support all 4 of our guiding principles, and if you look at the 5 plan goals as well, it supports 4 out of 5 of those. The only one it doesn't support is the one that says we don't want solar, which is interesting. The 2019 plan actually welcomes solar farms, and then in 2024, the list was changed. The survey, quite confusingly, did not ask about solar farms, just the list as a whole. I pushed back on this a bit with the key consultant who did the survey at the time, and the number was 53% did agree with the list. We don't know how people felt. Perhaps they agreed with the list because they didn't want junkyards or CAFOs or hazardous waste disposal sites and thought solar was fine. We did not get a number on solar. Finally, Montgomery County is already a vast industrial solar farm. Valero, in their own communications, boasts of buying 2/3 of our corn for their ethanol refinery. That's around 70,000 acres dedicated to fueling cars, which also does not stay in the county. What if we diversify the energy production a little? What if we took about 3% of that 70,000 acres and we use it to generate 100 times the net energy per acre, that's a real figure, preserve the soil, use far fewer chemical additives, enjoy the ecological benefits of native plants, generate 10 times the property tax revenue, and 5 times the profit for the landowner per acre, and displace the use of fossil fuels, which would give us cleaner air, better health, and higher crop yields. And we get all of this with 0 upfront investment from the county. A friend recently told me, solar panels are buckets that catch free money falling from the sky. It's not far off. I think we should let people who want to have the money buckets have the money buckets. It's hard to imagine a better all-around deal. Thank you.
Hey, good evening. My name is Rebecca Tukolsky. I do live in Indianapolis, but I've been a Hoosier my whole life, and I, like you, am watching my electricity prices go up. I also am here with Hoosier Environmental Council, and working on energy growth in the state of Indiana is what I do every single day from a policy perspective. So I'm happy to answer any questions about the sort of overall grid outlook at the end of this conversation. I want to focus on 3 things today. The first is property rights, the second is community benefits, and the third is kind of what I do, which is talking about how this fits into the bigger picture in the state of Indiana. So let's start by remembering that the land we're talking about in this project is owned by individuals and families. These are people who have the right to decide how their own property should be used, and some of these landowners have voluntarily chosen to lease their land for solar development. This is consistent with Indiana's long tradition of protecting private property rights. We should not tell a landowner that they cannot make a productive economic decision about their own property simply because somebody else, a neighbor, might not like it. A solar lease gives landowners another way to create value from their property without selling it. They can keep it in their family, pass it down to a future generation, and continue to keep the farmland possibly productive for the future. It can provide a stable and long-term source of income and allow that land to stay in the family and after its life return to other uses. But the benefits don't end just with those landowners. Copper Box, when a community hosts an energy project, the broader community benefits as well. And Copper Box represents a significant private investment with an opportunity for additional local tax revenue, which we've talked about at length, construction, employment, and other economic activities. Those benefits matter in rural Indiana. They matter here in Montgomery County, where communities, especially after the passage of SEA 1, which limited local tax revenues, they allow new opportunities for you to benefit from reduce burdens on existing taxpayers. And is that an emergency alarm? Okay. All right. Sorry. These benefits matter in rural Indiana, where communities are looking for ways to strengthen their tax base and create economic opportunity without putting additional burdens on existing taxpayers, especially in 2026 in the context of SEA 1. But the most important reason why this project is important here in Montgomery County and in the state of Indiana is because Indiana needs more electricity. Our electricity demand is changing rapidly. According to IOED, the Indiana Office of Energy Development, MISO, which is the grid operator, expects electricity consumption in this region to grow about 1.7% between now and 2030. And that growth is being driven by all kinds of things. Yes, data centers are one of them, but it's also electrification, it's also manufacturing, electric vehicles. All kinds of different drivers are changing the way that our grid is operating today. And what we're seeing in practice is that most utilities are meeting that new demand, not with clean technologies that are going to stay affordable in the long term, but with expensive and polluting technologies like keeping coal plants online longer and like building new gas plants. And the effect that has in practice, once the solar panels are online, you don't have to pay for gas to keep them operational. But when a new gas facility is put online and the cost of gas goes up, then Hoosiers are stuck paying for the change in that price because utilities are able to pass the cost of gas directly back to consumers. So we're not actually talking about should we build this solar project or not. We're talking about we have this new demand. Are we going to meet it with expensive and polluting technologies, or are we going to meet it with cleaner, more affordable technologies that are going to benefit our landowners, our communities, and ultimately the public health of each and every one of us? I also want to echo what Mr. Smiley said about the comprehensive plan. The plan doesn't outright ban solar. It says, think about it carefully. And I think what we've heard today from the folks at Copper Box is that they've done just that. They took not only your direct feedback about, not only your plans, kind of principles in mind, but also took your direct feedback as it relates to the provisions that you had asked for. So for those reasons, I would really encourage you to support this proposal, support those landowners in your community who have voluntarily chosen to participate, and recognize both the economic value and also the energy need that's really a part of a comprehensive solution for the state of Indiana. Thank you.
My name is Brad Carlson. I live at 207 South Vine Street in Crawfordsville. I'm a father of 3 kids, and I want to ensure the best future I can for them in this community. But to give some further context to my comments, I'm a professional ecologist, which basically means I study how nature works. That's the focus of my work. Most of my career has been spent working with Hoosier wildlife species, and I'm heavily involved in protecting habitat for endangered wildlife in the region. I'm speaking as someone who is willing to back up any claims with solid scientific data from the research literature. So every time we take a landscape and use it for some kind of energy production, there are costs. And so I'm very glad that we as a community would take a proposal like this seriously and evaluate it carefully. Generating power leaches toxic compounds into soil and waterways, devastates habitats for wildlife, and has produced air pollution like particulate matter and ground level ozone that kills millions every year. In my career, I've visited abandoned surface coal mines and measured the water chemistry of the lifeless streams hit with acid mine drainage. I've mapped out frog habitat and came across natural gas fracking sites with massive pools of toxic wastewater. We are advised not to eat fish from many parts of Sugar Creek right here due to mercury, which comes largely from burning coal, and the air pollution caused by power plants and burning gasoline kills 6 times as many Hoosiers every year as murder does. Solar energy isn't magically perfect, but it is far less harmful than those methods our community and state are using to power itself right now. It produces virtually no air pollution, soil pollution, or water pollution in comparison to coal, oil, and natural gas. You can look up the numbers. If this were a proposal to cut down a forest or drain a wetland for solar energy, I would be 100% against it, but that isn't what's on the table. In fact, this property was mostly a wet prairie in the past that was already drained. So if we're talking about historical state, that's the actual reference point. Converting some row crops to solar farming is actually reducing soil pollution, reducing water pollution, and reducing the loss of wildlife habitat, because agriculture itself is the biggest driver of those things in our region. Tilling soil, applying fertilizer, spraying pesticides, eliminating native plants are all part of the process of row crop agriculture, and they have consequences for human health, water quality, and wildlife. Those negative effects reverse when you replace the crops with solar panels. A study in Indiana itself showed double the number of grassland bird species in solar farms than in the crop fields right next to it. The study in Minnesota showed that you actually got better pollination of the nearby soy fields when you had a solar farm because of all the plants that support bees, which don't thrive on crops. Now, obviously, we need farming to survive, so I'm not ragging on farming, and we love the farmers market in town and getting our food from the folks here. So we need food, but we also need energy that is safe for wildlife and people. Everybody here is using energy day in, day out. Fortunately, by my math and backed up by other people, we're talking about less than half of 1% of the Montgomery County cropland going into solar production for a project that can power tens of thousands of homes while simultaneously improving habitats and protecting soil and water. There's lots of speculation and many claims out there to the contrary, but I have not seen any grounded real-world data that would show that this project would be anything other than a clear net positive for our community. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Karen Theta, and I live at 317 Old Mill Trace in Crawfordsville. Change, it can be difficult, can't it? Culture changes, leadership changes, families change, our bodies and our health change. Technology changes at an ever-increasing speed that can leave our heads spinning. Humans are wired to resist change, even positive change. We may fear the unknown. What will happen if, fill in the blank. You may believe that the status quo is best, and we want to cling to the familiar. The old way is the best way. We may fear failure. We may just be apathetic, thinking the change isn't worth the effort. We may lack faith in the change makers, doubting their knowledge and credentials, even though they have spent years in study of the issue. Instead, we confirm our ideas by surrounding ourselves with those who think like us. My grandfather, who was born in 1888, farmed in Iowa with horses. When the corn harvest came, he selected the biggest and best ears as his seed for the next year, and it yielded maybe 20 or 30 bushels per acre. Persuading farmers to plant hybrid corn was a slow process, but by 1935, 6% of Iowa's corn was planted to hybrids. But when hybrids were clearly shown to be better, farmers were persuaded, and by 1942, about the time my father started farming, nearly all corn planted in Iowa came from hybrid seed. Since then, genetic testing has improved the speed at which new hybrids are developed. Genetically modifying corn has changed the way we use pesticides. In 2025, the average U.S. corn yield for grain production was estimated at 186.5 bushels per acre, a record high. What do we do with all this corn? The Clean Air Act amendments of 1990, the renewable fuel standards, flex fuel vehicles, and other factors increased U.S. ethanol production from about 1.6 million gallons in 2000 to over 16 million gallons in 2024. The United States is the world's #1 ethanol producer. You've heard the numbers here that 40% or more of our corn crop is used for ethanol. So why am I taking my time talking to you about seed corn and ethanol production at a hearing about a solar farm? Here's why. You have heard over and over all the facts about solar farms. I don't need to repeat them again. You have also heard a lot of misinformation, but I believe you are all knowledgeable enough to discern the difference. My point is that agriculture is an industry in which change happens. How we use the land and our water, two of our most precious resources, changes. Your unfavorable recommendation last March seemed to hinge mainly on the county's comprehensive plan. It states, facilitate the necessary due diligence around renewable energy and large-scale industrial solar or wind projects. Yes, absolutely, do your due diligence in working with this company. The plan also states, continue to review and evaluate land use strategy as change occurs. What has changed just since we visited this issue in March? What has the war in Iran shown us about world oil supplies and subsequently gas prices? How is our local government coping with the loss of property tax revenue brought about by Indiana's Senate Enrolled Act 1? What does the increased demand for electricity with the rise of data centers tell us we need to do? Are our local farmers able to stay profitable with increased costs of fertilizer and low grain prices? What changes has Copper Box made to their proposal in response to public opinion? So what if we are willing to change? What if we put aside our fear of change? What if we acknowledge the clear scientific evidence that burning fossil fuels for electricity is harmful to our health and our environment? What if we recognize that we can capture the sun's energy in a cleaner, more economical way than a corn or a bean plant can, and still have plenty of farmland left to grow food? Advances in technology have given us new options. Are they perfect? No. Are they better? Yes. Will it require us to change our paradigm of how we will power our future? Most definitely. The change is happening. Montgomery County can be a part of it and benefit from it, or we can stay stuck in the past, farming with horses and saving the best ears for seed. It's up to you. Thank you very much.
My name is Levi Fowler, and I live here in Crawfordsville. I would love to see more clean energy in Montgomery County. For the past few years, I've done a lot of learning about the natural environment and how we are failing to protect it. This is one of the reasons why I think the Copper Box Solar Project is a great idea. Switching from gas and coal energy to renewables will reduce deforestation, improve air quality, and enable us to live healthier lives. In April, worldwide, renewable energy passed gas and coal for the first time in history. This is an amazing achievement, but America has barely played a part in this. If we want a cleaner and healthier world, we cannot rely on other countries to do the work for us. This is just as much our problem as it is everyone else's, and therefore we have just as much responsibility. The reality is that I may be living here after many people in this room are gone. The decisions that you make today will affect my future. I do not yet have the power that you do to make these changes for Montgomery County. I ask you today to please remember your calling to be faithful stewards of our land when you make decisions for the future. Thank you.
My name is Lucas Fowler, and I live in Crawfordsville. I support the Copper Box Solar Project for a few reasons. First, economically, this would be a great move for Montgomery County. Taxes from the solar farm will help tremendously in road repairs, paying our teachers, and generally making Montgomery County a safer and better place to live. Secondly, I understand that there is concern about the loss of farmland in our area, but Copper Box Solar Project has assured the health of the land under the solar farm will not only be improved, but will also provide a larger pollinator population for the surrounding farmland. It must also be noted that while the overall amount of farmland has been slightly reduced in Indiana, crop yields have risen due to advances in technology. Thirdly, let us not forget the rights of the property owners. Many of the owners of the land in question want this on their land. I wish that their rights be acknowledged and safeguarded. Finally, our modern lives require a lot of energy. Montgomery County should do its part in producing safe and clean energy. The copper box solar project makes sense economically and ecologically, while upholding the rights of property owners. This is an opportunity to work together, to work toward a more affordable, healthier future in our county. Thank you.
My name's Ray Faber. I live 501 Louise Avenue. I have since 1980. I'm glad that Mr. Fry's here tonight because he'll probably remember some of the things I'm going to say. The first plant was put behind Pleasant Meadows, and it's been in place for a very long time on county land. The next two projects were put in on county land behind those by the new jail. There are all the other projects, and I believe that every one of those are on county land. There are homes in Pleasant Meadows that are close to the solar field, and you can ask those people who live on the back row what they think and how it's affected their cost and resale values, their validity. There's a home just south of the farm on 150 that's right up against it. I mean, it's right there. He can walk outside and touch the fence in 2 minutes, right there. And you can ask him what he thinks about living there. Sealy came here because of our dedication to alternative energy. Reason. Montgomery County at one time was the #1 solar producing power county in the state. IMPA made sure of that. All the plants that you have around here are for IMPA. You can look them up on their website and see how much power they produce. When Random House built their second edition, added on to the building, they built a solar field. And everybody thought, oh, it's going to be a token. I have confirmation from CEL&P that they will lose $1 million this year in revenue because that solar field there by Random House, according to the maintenance guys, runs the whole building. So that's pretty remarkable. There's no smokestacks. If you go by all the solar fields here and you stand next to the fence and you stand next to everything and you might hear a little hum if one of the inverters is running pretty hard. Or if a transformer's actually running pretty hard, you'll hear a hum, but you won't hear much. And there's plenty of animals that are in and out of those fields all the time because of the ground cover. I've been watching solar since 1970, and I've watched plans and I've watched programs and I've watched the price of solar panels tank, and I've watched people build homes where the power company wanted $15,000 to run power to their house, and they put solar and wind in and took care of their homes. This is the first time I've seen a project like this where they increase the setbacks, put in more agricultural buffers, and put in more work environmentally than anything else. You're going to have increased pollinators, tremendous amount, because of their agricultural vegetative setbacks. Next, there's a company called Agrivoltaics. You can look them up online. They came to the United States 3 years ago. There is now a farm in Wisconsin, and I think another one in Missouri, that they raise their panels up 6 feet off the ground because they graze cattle under it up to 700 pounds. They're afraid to do it more because, you know, they might get a little aggressive with the equipment. There's a solar farm down in Texas, which down in Texas, anything less than 10,000 acres is a hobby. They have 7,000 sheep that they use under their solar panels with shepherds, and they graze the sheep under there to keep all the vegetation down. There's a blueberry farmer in Massachusetts who put panels over the top of his blueberries because the summer suns and the dry spells were killing his blueberries. Now he has a great crop. They've tested strawberries under it. There's certain varieties of tomato plants that grow better under shade because they don't get scalded and they don't burn up in the times when you don't have any rain and it's all sun. The one problem I do have is the IMPA field on 150. There was an accident there and a guardrail was shoved through the fence and took out 2 arrays. And you guys receive revenue from those. You should look into why most of that field won't operate, because those 2 arrays were killed by that guardrail that went through the fence and nobody seems to know who hit it. Okay? That's irritating to me that something like that happens, an accident, and it's not taken care of. That's not responsibility. As far as this project goes, this would probably be the best project you could get from any solar power company to come to offer you anything. You're going to have increased homes, and you're going to have Kroger's brand new building. You're going to have more industry coming in here, and the demand is going to make sure that their solar field furnishes power to our city, because it'll go through IMPA more than likely. Thank you.
Brian Sillery, 997 West, 1150 South. I've lived in Montgomery County my entire life, and I don't plan on leaving. I'd like to voice my opposition to solar panels in Montgomery County. My main concern is safety related and economic devaluation, groundwater contamination through thousands of poles driven into the ground, where cadmium and other heavy metals can have a clear path into the water table. How would the county deal with the fires? You guys have already had discussions about the transformers and all that. If you look to the south side of Crawfordsville, where you guys have approved the zoning to build all the new housing, that's real growth of the county. Housing and all the businesses that are going to be going in on that road through there, only hundreds of acres to get all that development that's there. Has real sustainable income for Montgomery County, not other parts of the state, through property taxes and income taxes with all the jobs and the homes. Where will Montgomery County get the money to reclaim the land? They say they're going to do that 30 years from now. How they're going to have enough money put back for the, everything becomes toxic. Every year that goes by, more and more things get added to the list. This would be like allowing hundreds of big box buildings to be put in Montgomery County, knowing in 30 years they were going to be abandoned. How's that a benefit to Montgomery County? Once you allow the first solar field to be put in, you won't be able to stop the next one. We need to make Montgomery County attractive to businesses through people wanting to build beautiful homes here and not have existing residents flee as they see their property values plummet. Do you really think that someone's going to want to build a $400,000, $500,000 house here, not knowing if a solar panel farm is going to pop up next to it? And that's probably a cheap house the way things are right now. In closing, we have to decide whether we want to forfeit our county to electric production for people in other counties or states, or reserve it for the betterment of our own county through economic development, which you've already proven that you've done in the past. Thank you very much.
Zach Page, 7260 North, 175 East. Kind of smack dab in the middle of this, and I've yet to meet any of these people here. Know most of my neighbors, but have liked to at least been contacted, by maybe somebody from the corporation about what's going on around me. Just got a couple concerns, questions about the emergency response time. Should there be, fire, leakage? What is that going to be? Is our fire department, they say we're going to be trained for it, but I know it takes at least 10 minutes to get out to my house from the middle of town. How much can that spread during that window, if that's going to be the window? My second point, I guess, question would be the reflection from all those panels. How's that going to, impact my home, my residence? Could that, start a fire in my house? I doubt it, but I don't know. I'm going to be surrounded, so just kind of a little scary for me here, just not knowing these things. I guess I didn't really hear anything about the wildlife. I assume we're going to be putting up fences around all this. What's that going to do to the deer population, squirrels, the predators in the area, the coyotes, etc.? That's a huge impact on Montgomery County. The deer will travel elsewhere. That might be public highways involving more accidents, etc. Didn't really come prepared, sorry guys, but thank you so much for your time.
Good evening. My name is Peter Berthelsen. I'm here representing Conservation Blueprint, St. Paul, Nebraska. Conservation Blueprint was contracted to develop the vegetation management plan that kind of goes to some of these things, so a lot of the questions that Commissioner Denhart had. I know that this isn't the time for questions to go back and forth, but if there's an opportunity at some other time, would love to pull the thread and provide you with a more detailed answer on what your question was. One of the considerations that you have in front of you is about future viability, and there's been a great number of questions tonight, and people are interested and want to know more about things like soil health. Hey, if this goes on to our valuable farm ground and it's there for 30 years, what's it going to do? Well, we can easily say with authority that it's not going to maintain the soil health. It's going to improve the soil health. Very easy to document and show that, and that will happen over 100% of the site. It's not a high bar to get over to show that we would be doing things like improving the soil health. And the vegetation management plan that was developed is a detailed, specific plan developed just for this site to think about how are we going to do things, because it's critically important when we're talking about former ag land. If you leave a void there, if you just allow the land to sit there and rest, nature will fill it in, and it will fill it in with things that we don't want, weeds and that sort of thing. So there's a very specific, detailed plan for how the vegetation will be handled on that site. And I guess I would just close again by saying that I know that this isn't a back and forth time for questions, but if there is later, or if people from the public have questions, all of the questions that have been asked tonight, the person that spoke right before me, there is a subject matter expert in the room that can answer that question. So for everybody in the room, I would encourage you that if you have questions, there's people here that can provide those answers for you. So thank you for your time tonight.
Rick Roach. I'm not from here. I'm from Monticello, Indiana. Worked with the crew that you see here on a project like what they're proposing to you. They asked me if I would come and speak from that perspective as a farmer and how I see it here now. I want to first say that the guy ahead of me just said about there's experts in the room. I'm not an expert, so I don't want anybody to come to me afterwards. But the other thing I wanted to say too, and I like to have a little fun, it's a great country. It's a wonderful process that's going on here. People are able to come forward with different perspectives, different opinions. You guys have quite a job ahead of you. The other thing I wanted to say is my great-great-grandfather came to Crawfordsville in the 1860s. The story goes he flipped a coin. He was either staying or he was going on north. I don't know whether it was heads or tail, but he went on north. So anyhow, let's get to the business. Best use. We're talking about best use. A farmer looks at his land always and he tries to consider what is the best use. We look at corn, soybeans, wheat, a little bit of alfalfa, right? What's the best use of that soil? We love the land. That's why we're on the land. I came back because I had a passion for the land, still do. I think one thing that we have to remember, we do produce energy. That's all we produce with corn, soybeans, wheat, alfalfa. We're looking at a crop here that's, if you had an opportunity to plant a 30-year perennial crop that would produce more or net more than your second best crop will gross, it's pretty hard to pass that up if you're a farmer, is it not? Pretty hard to pass up. So we looked at it very carefully and we made a decision and we chose land to put into it for a specific reason. Happened to be in the TIF district of Monticello, tax revenue, a lot of different things that came to play. 5 different landowners are involved. One of them was somebody that had 400 acres that I farmed for. Part of why he got involved was he had eminent domain on his land. He said, if I get solar panels on my land for the next 30 years, I don't have to worry about eminent domain. I'm just trying to help here a little bit. The other thing that I think we need to think about is anyone that's in this room that's a farmer like myself, we know how difficult it is to stay in this industry. Less than 2% of us are still farmers. I know what it takes to buy a combine, to build a grain bin, to build 80 acres, buy 80 acres, right? How do we stay in this business? We do it by utilizing opportunities as they present themselves. Some people call that luck. I call that business decisions. We made a business decision, and in so doing, it's allowed our family to pass on to the next generation, and my wife and I can go ahead and live and not take from the farm to allow it to go ahead and operate as it's presently operating. I think it's critically important that we understand, I believe personally, and why I'm here, is that I believe the best use is determined by the property owner. And if the property owner cares and loves the land, he is not going to make a decision that he thinks will negate the value of that land 30 years from now. I won't be alive. I'd like to be, because any of us that have farmed and or are farmers, I know what the soil looks like on fence rows I took out 30 years ago. I can still find them. That's what I anticipate seeing on the land where our solar farm is. I went there with this one simple question one day. I want to know what the scrap value is of everything that's on my 154 acres that's in this project. And the way I walked away from there, I said to my son and my son-in-law that's running our operation, we tore out a lot of fence. I said we could get this thing back in operation in about a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks, if we had to. So that's, again, what a wonderful country we live in. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Hey, good evening. Have you noticed one thing this evening and this afternoon? Oh, Mark Smith, 1925 East, 800 North, Crawfordsville. Have you noticed one thing? Those that are getting up and speaking to approve this rezoning don't live in my area. They're from town. They don't live next to where this is going to be going in. This gets a little personal for me. My grandparents moved to this area where we're talking about the rezoning in 1937. And so I've lived in this area my whole life. My wife and Susan and I are one of the few people that will be most affected by the proposed solar project. Why? Because my home and property are one of those that will be adjacent to it. I have lived and or farmed on this proposed eyesore my entire 70 years and do not want to see prime farmland used for this purpose. I have no problem with our towns in this county having the smaller solar sites because power produced stays in those communities. The power produced by this very large industrial factory will not stay in our community, but will be used by cities, not in our area, so why should we suffer all the negatives that go along with it? Why should we that have lived, paid taxes, and have played an active role and productive role in our county as 4-H leaders, Montgomery County Community Foundation Board, County Councilman, Economic Development Board, Health Board, and Community Action Program, just to name a few, pay the price when a new outside company says, boy, do we have a deal for you? That's a slap in the face for us lifelong residents. The three landowners that have signed leases for this project either do not live in my neighborhood or they don't live within sight of the 435,000 panels on this 2,620 acres project, not the 1,800 acres that they proposed in March. I'll venture to say that none of those signers or lease signers or people here today in favor of this have solar panels on their roofs or backyards. If it's so great, why not? Susan and I do not want to live next to these ugly, noisy, heat-producing things ruining our beautiful country landscape. We are deeply concerned about our property values when the time comes when we must sell because of our health or age. If we don't want to live in adjacent to those, who else would? It's easy for you that are speaking in favor of this rezoning because it does not directly affect you or your neighborhood. We ask that this commission vote no on this rezoning and keep the ground as agriculture cropland. Thank you.
Hi. It's not low enough. My name is Brittany Fitzgerald. It's my husband, Steve. We have 2 kids, Lily and Steven. We live at 7557 North 175 South, Crawfordsville, which would be directly across from this. We purchased our house about 2 years ago. We did research. We asked a lot of questions. We made sure that Montgomery County wasn't going to allow solar or wind to come in and destroy the county. We felt confident in the answers that we received. We felt confident that Montgomery County leaders have and would continue to protect the land and protect their people. So we chose to buy our home here. The proposed industrial solar field will be directly across the road from our house. We moved from Boone County, if that tells you anything. We chose to leave Boone County, which we both grew up in our entire lives, because we didn't want to raise our children there. The massive development and beautiful, purposeful farmland that they chose to destroy with development and growth was not for us. Our new home in Montgomery County has been wonderful for us. We have land, pets, farm animals, a garden, and the most beautiful sunsets and sunrises. Our kids love it there. We feel blessed. We feel blessed to be surrounded by God's creation. We put a lot of work into this house and to be our forever home. We would be devastated if an industrial solar field came in. I told myself not to cry, but I always. We're concerned about this. We're concerned about our health, our animals, our kids, our wildlife, our neighbors. Everyone keeps saying property values aren't affected, but if this was here, I wouldn't live here. And so if it comes here, I will sell, we will leave. And how will we do that? No one wants to buy right beside. And I think that that's the trickery here. People are talking about property value. We need to be talking about the fact that no one will buy it, so there isn't a value there. They will be overlooked. The houses are constantly overlooked. During the previous Plan Commission meeting, we heard the representatives from Copper Box tell lies regarding the possibilities for floods, fires, noises. They definitely are noisy. We've driven past them just to get an idea, and it's awful. We've visited industrial sites surrounding counties. The inverters are loud. They create an awful, ominous environment we would not want to live with. Like I said earlier, property values would absolutely be affected. Homes are overlooked. I've learned that due to this exact problem, some states and counties actually require solar companies to pay the surrounding homeowners a difference in costs. This would not be a requirement if property values weren't affected. I think it's important to know that I'm not entirely anti-solar. Solar panels have a purpose: small scale, rooftops, urban areas. I wrote here 1,800 acres. It's up now, I guess. 2,000 plus acres on prime farmland do not make sense. There's a common misconception that solar energy will cut down on local energy costs. This is not true. The energy will not stay here in Montgomery County. Like the small fields that the county has, those stay here. It would get sent out elsewhere. I found it interesting at the last meeting that the only people who were speaking in favor of this proposal were people who were being paid to speak in favor of it, or they would get paid if they convinced the rest of us to agree with it. None of them live near us. None of them live right beside a solar field. I feel like the opinions of those of us who have the most to lose should matter the most. We're the neighbors who would have to be forced to pay the price. We would pay the price more than just money. I've yet to hear from one person who lives right next to an industrial solar plant that's in favor of it, and I've looked. I read the Montgomery County Comprehensive Plan, like we've talked about several times today. The overall theme was to create a county that would support residential growth. Well, we're proof that if the solar panels were here, residential growth will not come. The desired outcomes of Montgomery County envisions a forward-thinking master plan that prioritizes smart growth, economic mobility, rural preservation, improved well-being, and community resiliency as its key outcomes. Listed in the undesirable uses section, once again, we have wind, solar, as two of the top things. Protecting natural resources, including the preservation of agricultural land, is listed among the plan's priorities. It would be a terrible shame to allow something like this that is the opposite of what the plan states. I was actually impressed when I read the comprehensive plan. I have a lot of hope for our county to continue to make the right choices and goals mentioned for all of our residents. Please do not allow this to happen. Please say no to industrial solar. Please agree with us that Copper Box's petition to rezone is unfavorable and not what the county wants or needs. And honestly, as a teacher, if you go to the basics, I've taught students, what do we need? Food, water, air, shelter, not solar panels.
My name is Terry Stevens, born and raised in Montgomery County. Can you guys hear me? I just want to briefly touch on 3 or 4 topics. And frankly, solar will be the least. So just to clarify some questions, I just jotted some stuff down. Depending on the source, I think Indiana roughly imports somewhere between 15 and 20% of their juice currently. The grid is begging for help, and somebody, someplace is going to be progressive enough to step to the plate. Safety issues, I heard some safety concerns in March. I've heard the term used some this evening. There's 5 to 7 solar locations in Montgomery County, and I feel like we've got ourselves pretty coached up and trained up for safety. The first thing you're going to say is mega versus what we've got is different. Won't disagree with that, but safety is safety. To Steve's question earlier about where's this juice going to go, I can't tell you. I won't even pretend to try. I will tell you this. None of the agriculture production in Montgomery County currently stays in Montgomery County. Corn leaves, beans leave, cattle leave. They all leave. So ag production is going to leave the county. Doesn't mean it's a bad thing, but it's not going to stay local. To Jake's question on topsoil and subsoil, I made some amendments in the contract. Specifically, everybody's concerned about where this topsoil is going to go. Tom got tired of me worrying about where the topsoil was going to go. It's not going to leave. The decommission portion got amended. We system tiled the farm after we bought it. Electricity wants to get rid of water just as bad as a farmer does. They just don't go well together. They're tickled to death. It's all GPS and mapped by Maxwell. We're going to try to if we get there, we're going to try to coordinate the tiling system with our panels. I'm going to try to be brief too. I want to, now we'll get away from solar. I want to talk about the comprehensive plan just for a second. It seems like most of my adult life, we debated planning and zoning versus personal property rights. I heard it for 20 years. And I feel, and it may surprise some, but basically I was for planning and zoning in a limited fashion. I'm fighting a little bit of a cold. The one thing, I felt like it kind of got pushed through in the 12th hour, which was fine with me. I was okay with it. Where I feel like we've somewhat got lost with our comprehensive plan is the personal property owner's rights. I feel it's way too far down the line on the priority list. To an earlier comment that the 5 criteria are very clear, I respectfully disagree. I think to an extent they're terribly subjective. They're not just boxes that there's a scorecard and we can check it, we met it. They're terribly subjective. It's one man's opinion versus somebody else's. At least in my personal opinion, they're not as clear as what's been indicated. Terribly subjective. I feel I also, I don't want to come across as combative, and I'm not done. I'm afraid I'm going to before it's over. I want to reiterate one time, and this goes to the personal property rights. The most opposition coming on this project, we just heard about, hey, you don't live there. I live there. The farm sold in a public auction. That means it can sell to anybody. The most opposition was sitting there. They chose not to buy that day. And now they want to tell me how to run it. Wouldn't we all want that position? Personal property rights has to be a big deal here. Timber, new core, housing addition south of Crawfordsville. I loved living on the south side of Crawfordsville until it decided to blow up. We can talk about economic growth. We've got all this manufacturing. It's impressive. It's terrible. They're all abated. We abated everything. We got a company willing to come in and spend $300+ million and spend $45 million in taxes, and they're willing to pay you. They're not even asking for an abatement. Okay, I'll keep moving. By the way, all that was timber, new core, housing, all done on prime farmland. Prime farmland. I want to discuss briefly the protocol and the process of how all this works. It's a little disappointing. You guys are doing an awesome job. It's a little disappointing that we don't have a full quorum. Anyway, enough of that. I think, and you've asked great questions. Everybody's asked great questions. The disappointing thing about this process to me is it comes with a recommendation. Why would there be a recommendation? You guys are intelligent, great community people. Why do you need a recommendation? Because this is how my naive mind works. You guys come with a recommendation, and it takes a pretty strong argument to buck the trend, to buck the recommendation. Once you give that recommendation, it takes an even stronger, probably takes a stronger argument for the commissioners to buck it down the road. it's pretty easy for everybody to say, well, yeah, it was recommended. I'm just going to agree with that. Commissioners say, the commission recommended it, I'm just going to agree with that. I don't know Tom Klein. I'm sure he's a great guy. I pay enough I pay enough taxes, don't take offense to this, Tom. I pay enough taxes, I don't know if I want Tom making a $45 million decision for me. I want the people that I elect. No offense. It's an unelected guy making that staff report, making that recommendation. I want somebody that I vote for's feet being held to the fire, vet it, investigate it, make a decision, and I'll live with it. And short of begging, I want you guys to push it to them. Make them make a decision. We shouldn't let an unelected guy make a recommendation and we just all cave to it. It's too big a deal. Revenue. Kind of in the same line of what I was just talking about. I'm fortunate enough to own ground in Fountain County and Montgomery, and within $1 or $2, Fountain County is within $1 or $2 half what Montgomery County's property taxes are, half. And I'll call the services a push. And maybe that may be a stretch, but I'm going to call them a push for the sake of the argument. There's not a soul sitting behind me for or against when the assessments came out that wasn't livid. I mean, this county is tired of property taxes going up. They're tired of getting taxed. You guys sitting there were probably livid as well. For us to turn our nose up at $45 million, they came in here, I was frankly terribly impressed by the concessions. They came in here with a vastly different picture than they did in March. And oh yeah, the money doubled. Our economic situation in this county, we wouldn't be doing our due diligence if we didn't at least take a look at that. Things aren't exactly rolling here. All kinds of things are happening, but everybody got to bait it. Nobody wants to pay tax. Everybody got to bait it. I will end with easy decisions. I mean, they call them easy decisions for a reason. Game-changing hard decisions. People talk about time and change, and game-changing hard decisions, progressive. Sooner or later, this revenue pile will, Fountain County is putting 2 solar farms up. They're not saturating their landscape. They're strategically placing 2 solar farms to enhance revenue. And they're already close to half where we are. They're at least being progressive enough. They're not saturating. I don't want it saturated. We could sit here sitting on our hands and watch the rest of the world generate that revenue, and then we're going to shrug our shoulders like, it is what it is. Where's the money supposed to come from? We had our opportunity. Push this thing to the commissioners that were elected. Let them make a decision. I appreciate your time. I think I'm done. Thanks, guys. Thanks, guys.
Hi, Michelle Parker, Brian Parker. We live on 800 North, 343 East. We live right next to one of those pink boxes there. How many more times are we going to have to stand here and fight for our rural community? How many more times? They can put a different color lipstick on their pig this time. It's not changing. The comprehensive plan is the same. It hasn't changed. We have a voice. And that's all I have. I'm short. Thank you.
Mark Barkley, 3215 West, US 136, Crawfordsville, also a lifetime Montgomery County resident. And I know I'm not supposed to address anybody directly, but I do want to address something Terry said. Fountain County's services are not quite as good as Montgomery County. You do a better job with what you get on your tax revenue. Gentlemen, I do not live next to this proposed site. but I just bought at a premium price a farm that butts up to the east side of it. I just bought for a premium price a farm that butts up to the south side. I will not be in this. My son, who is 47 years old, is going to buy a house right next door to where this solar farm is going to be. They're not scared of it, and they're going to invest $300-some thousand to put the house back up to where it should be. So property rights, property values, come on, gentlemen. I bought 2 farms at a premium. My son's going to move up there. My granddaughter's going to move up there. And one thing that hasn't been discussed very clearly was the income tax that Montgomery County is going to raise. Gentlemen, farmers aren't making $50 to $60 an acre, clear money to be taxed. I don't know what their contract says, but it's going to be in excess of $1,000 an acre. It could be $1,500. Multiply that by your 500. You have more tax revenue. And just again, due diligence and full disclosure. Yes, I have an option on a solar farm for me that will be within, if you don't restrict me, within 300 feet one side of my house, 200 feet of the other side, and 100 the other side. I'm not scared of them. Thank you.
My name is Rick Ward, farm 8881 North, 350 East, Crawfordsville. I farm directly east of this project and north of this project, so I've got about 1.5 miles of shared property line. Tom reached out to me earlier this year, or after the last meeting, and wanted to meet, and I took that opportunity. We had a good discussion. We talked about a number of things, some things they were going to change. It didn't change my mind. I'm still against the project. I think that there are a number of issues here. The area that they're trying to put this in, I don't believe is a good area for a project of this type. You've got 825 acres of panels going on 2,600 acres. I don't know, I do the math, I think, okay, shouldn't that be more like 1,800 panels or acres of panels? A lot of setbacks, roads, buildings, homes, drainage ditches, areas that are going to be rezoned that they have pumps on that flood every once in a while. They're not putting panels there, but there are issues with this whole area. And I really think that that's something that needs to be considered about when you look at this project, that this is not the best area for that. I'm not against solar. I'm not against wind. I think there's a place for renewables. I do. But I just don't think this is the correct area for that. That said, I think the most desirable use is agricultural. That's what it is now. It's some of the most productive that we have. I'll say this, we talk about change. Farmers aren't opposed to change. We're driving driverless tractor, we're using driverless tractors. We're using satellites, variable rate technology. We use drones. We're not opposed to change, but we have to be proven that what is going to change is going to benefit not just us, but the community as a whole. This benefits a small amount of people. And I think as a county, we will grow in the future. I see growth coming from Boone County. I've got a cousin lives up by McCutcheon, and they're getting ready to build numerous subdivisions next to him in the cornfields up there. Growth is coming from the north. This county will grow if you want growth. It's just going to take time, and it may not be growth in solar, but it may be growth in other ways that benefit the community as a whole, and more people benefit from that. The other thing I want to bring up is I'm not sure how long a complex of this is going to survive. Change again, they look at the wind turbines. They've redesigned wind turbines that they don't even look like the old wind turbines anymore. Will this still be a facility that's going to be viable? We have a governor that's promoting Indiana to be the nuclear producing state of the country of energy. We have a nuclear generator not far from us. It's been in existence for 25 years. It's safe, it's working. You know, I think that may be the future, and there are some hurdles we have to get over with that. But I think I question how viable is this going to be? 10 years, maybe? 30? I'm not sure, and I agree. I don't think that land can be turned back to be as productive. It can be turned back, but they'll still move topsoil. Purdue says it takes 300 to 500 years to produce 1 inch of topsoil. So while they move 75 acres worth, are they going to move it back when they're done? No, I doubt it. It's going to stay where it is, so you're going to have that area that's not going to be as productive. And so it won't be as viable to farm, nor will it be as viable to rent out, because it won't produce that top yield. It will produce a yield that's less. Your comprehensive plan says what it does. You know, industrial solar is it's not a desirable land use. We have a community vision that says that we'll be responsible stewards of rural character and agricultural assets. I think that's what we have to look at. We've got a great plan. You guys have developed a great plan, and I think it is. You've got your areas of industrial and residential and commercial and agricultural. And I think that we just need to stick with the plan and go with that. It's a good plan, and I commend you for your work. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. I want to especially thank you for putting your email address out there for us so we could all get our concerns. I'm Kenny Jackson. I'm from Linden, Indiana. I farmed till 1984, and I decided there's got to be a better way of making a living than letting politics and drought decide your income. So I went to work for Caterpillar. I traveled the world. I've been in every sinkhole you've ever seen. And let me tell you something. Any of you people that haven't seen people starving, you don't know what it's like. And let me tell you something. We keep taking farmland. I don't care if it's an acre for a service station or if it's 500 acres or 1,000 acres for a solar farm. Eventually, we're going to get to the point we ain't going to have enough. And when that happens, the good Lord ain't making no more. Don't care what they tell you. He ain't making no more. Well, we got it. We got to utilize it the best way we can. You folks, damn, I wouldn't want your job. You guys have got to be the ones to balance it. And it is a tightrope to walk. I know it. And I appreciate what you try to do. Now, for you, young man, I'm going to say one thing. You did a damn good job. Done a damn good job. You done a damn good job. But the picture of the sheep in the solar farm, you might want to take that one out. We both know that ain't going to happen. They ain't going to put hogs in there either. You probably won't see very many cows wandering around in it. And it's going to really be hard on the wildlife. Deer, pheasants, quail, not going to have any. And the same tile he was talking about helping drain is also going to run to that same ditch with any of the pollutants off the solar farm, whether it be herbicides, cambium out of the solar panels, or what it is. I'm glad to see he's going to use Nucor for the steel, because the solar panels are going to come from China or Thailand or somewhere else, because we don't make them, because it's too dangerous to make them here. It seems to me one of the biggest things in this is greed. They want to build a 200 megawatt power plant. Did you sit down and do the figuring of how much money that makes a year? They can afford to rent farmland. They can afford to build roads. They can afford to give taxes. Because at 51 cents or $51 a megawatt, that's what it sells for here. That power is not going to go here. It's going to Duke Energy, one of the largest utilities in the United States, which means that power will end up going out to the East Coast, where they can sell it for half again as much as they can sell it for here. Now, we both know that's what you call capitalism. You buy it for this, you sell it for that. Too bad farmers can't do it. One more thing I'm going to put in. The real driver of this thing is greed. Don't let nobody tell you different. If you as a farm owner and you wanted to do something to help, you would take some young farmer and say, you know, I don't want to farm this anymore. I'm going to let you farm it. That's what you'd really do. That'd be being the steward of the land. Building a power plant on it, sorry, that's not very good stewardship. And when your neighbors find out because they come around and tell them instead of you telling them, that's not very neighborly either. And I'll tell you, I've known Bowler Dicks for roughly 60 years, and they're the kindest people there is. They're also good farm people. And that's all the old man's got to say. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kathy Witt. I live at 7686 North, 575 East Darlington. A few miles from here. One of my biggest concerns about all this is the groundwater, because it seems like all over the country we're having problems with water, and when it's gone, it's gone. So I'm concerned about the drilling and all that too, being that close to my area. The other concern I have is for our county with all of our energy things we're looking at, which I know this is one of them. I just went to a meeting last week for this carbon dioxide pipeline they want to run from the ethanol plant towards Kirkpatrick. I'm hearing the plus and minuses on that. Again, that has a lot of concerns for the environment, the groundwater, those kind of things. Then I go to a doctor appointment, I get told, hey, did you hear they're trying to get the wind turbines back in Montgomery County? It's kind of like, how much of this can Montgomery County do, you know? So I agree we need the energy. I am concerned because the electricity will not stay here locally, being off. And the pollution in general, it seems like there's a lot of questions, and a lot of this hasn't been around like the 30-year time period. There's no proof of that. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But I'm just kind of concerned about our county too, as to how much of this can we take on with all this in our small area to affect our communities and our property values and the public in general. So I just hope you'll weigh everything out. And I know this meeting is strictly about the solar, but in my mind, we need to all keep in mind all these other issues that are affecting our county. There are environmental things and there are energy things. And our county's only so big. So I hope you'll look up all the evidence, listen to the public comments, and make the right decision for how you feel will affect the bulk of the people. Thank you for your time.
Good evening. I'm Tommy Cleveland. You heard from me briefly before answering some questions on health and safety. I'm from further away than I think nearly anybody here. I'm here from North Carolina because I've been asked by Tom to be here as an expert that can provide facts on some of the questions that have been raised tonight on the technology. An engineer that's worked in solar now for over 20 years. That's what I've focused my career on. First at North Carolina State University and now at an energy firm that inspects large-scale solar and battery projects for utilities. So I'm very knowledgeable in many aspects, and I've specifically studied health and safety impacts now for well over 12 years. I got started doing that because in North Carolina, it was one of the very first states to install utility-scale solar. That was about a 10-year run where North Carolina had more solar installed than anywhere outside of California, and it was all ground-mounted solar, you know, much like this. It was an early place that this kind of technology was going in, and my role at the university led me to looking into lots of questions from communities just like this across my state, going back 15 years ago. So it's great questions that there are answers for that are based on experience in places like North Carolina, in places, other parts of the world that have been doing similar installations for even longer. So I wanted to give you a little more background because I am from further away to make a case for why is it I'm here talking about this and why might you listen to some of the answers I could hopefully provide. I'll be brief to just comment on a few things I've heard so far, but we'll welcome a chance if you've got follow-up questions later. One concern I heard a couple times was fire. The panels have almost nothing flammable in them. The only thing flammable in them are some layers of plastics. Modern panels now have a glass back. So it's a glass front and a glass back and an aluminum frame. The only thing really that can catch fire in that situation is the insulation on the wire. So it's possible to catch a fire. You can have a fault. You'll have a very localized fire, but it does not spread panel to panel. Even if you get a grass fire, the grass fire can't light the panels on fire because, as I described, they're essentially glass and aluminum. So it's very low risk. Fires do happen at solar farms. There's over 700 multi-megawatt projects just in North Carolina, many of those a decade old. There's been a number of fires at those, but it's been a non-issue. Rural fire departments can handle them easy. Generally, they go out on their own in a really short time, but they're not at risk of spreading rapidly. There's lots of good information out there from national firefighting agencies on how to fight fires. So it should not be of a concern to the community. Toxicity is another concern I heard. There's a lot of misinformation and information taken out of context. The bottom line is the panels are extremely safe and don't pose any toxicity risks to the community. I've heard concern about groundwater and drilling. There's no drilling in these systems. There's piles that get pounded into the ground several feet. It's not drilled and it's not down to groundwater. And so there's no impact to groundwater. There's nothing that comes out of the panels, and there's no use of water. I heard a question about glare and reflectivity. The glass fronts have an anti-glare coating, but when the sun strikes them at a glancing angle, there is some reflection. But these panels are tracking the sun, so they slowly move during the day, which means you don't experience that glancing angle. They're always being faced toward the sun. So I would not expect any glare to be visible off these panels. And all these topics are covered in the report that I believe the board has. Sound has been a concern again. The equipment does make some noise, but this site, the Copper Box site, has looked very carefully at this topic. They've moved all that noise-making equipment deep into the project and are even proposing in the sound study to put a couple of sound blocking barriers right near or right by a couple of inverters so that they are confident it will be extremely quiet. I would expect not be able to be heard by any of the neighbors because of how they've positioned that equipment. It is possible if you're standing on the edge of a site with an inverter right by the fence, yeah, you'll definitely hear that, but you won't hear it when it's hundreds of feet back into the project. There was a concern about producing heat. There's been a lot of research on this. There's still ongoing research on the impact of these kind of projects and heat in different environments, but the bottom line is there's no increased temperature to anywhere outside of the project. Some of the research shows there can be small changes in day or night temperature. Inside the project is very minimal, but it's only inside the panel area. There'd be no impact to anybody outside in terms of temperature. And then on the question of energy and the electricity this produces versus corn, I've done this analysis myself and read other articles that have done the analysis. If you compare the miles you could drive from PV on an acre versus the miles you could drive from the ethanol on that same acre, it's about a 75-to-1 difference. So that the PV electricity in a year, you could drive 75 times further than on the ethanol. So it's a dramatically more energy out of per acre when you compare PV to corn that goes into ethanol. So those were just a few topics I wanted to cover quickly. I think my bottom line point is there's a lot of experience out there on these topics, and there's good answers to the questions being asked. Thank you for the time.
Hello, Rich Watkins, 10756 North 575 East, Linden. Just a couple quick points, observations mainly. They talk about our 53% on the comprehensive plan. I've been taking a score here, and I'm not going to count it out, but as you see, these are all people who live in the county that are against it. These are all people that are for it. There's a couple in here that are for it that live in the county, but most of them live in the city. The other thing, they talked about property rights. I'm all for property rights, but I'm also for, I believe, part of property rights is containment. If you can't contain a project on your property, that's loss of containment. That applies to a lot of things. I believe this is one of them. I'm not an expert in any of this. I don't claim to be. And all I know is what I think in my mind and what I've reasoned and read and put together in my own thoughts. But I believe this is a loss of containment. And I live in the county, and I don't want these things. So if you vote against them, I'll thank you in advance for a favorable rejection. Thank you.
Good evening. Rich Kirkland, Kirkland Appraisals, 9408 Northfield Court, Raleigh, North Carolina. I was going to be pretty brief if I could, but just referring back to the impact analysis that we turned in with this, I know we heard a bunch of, not a bunch, but a couple of people bringing up property value, so I thought I would just reiterate a few points from that. If you can look on page 1 of that when you get to it, there's just a summary of all the data points we looked at. Just starting from the top, we looked at 9 different national studies. We interviewed 188 assessors across the country, including we reached out to every assessor in Indiana to find out what they're seeing. We got 170 responses back saying no, we found no impact out of that 188. The other 18 just didn't answer that question. They answered other questions, but not that. We got 0 responses from any assessors in any of the jurisdictions we reached out to that they saw any impact on property value. We have, in the Midwest, we have 8 examples of sale-resale, which is what I was describing earlier this evening. The sale-resale is really the best methodology for looking at that because there's no appraiser judgment involved. We have a lot more that if we go national, but just in the Midwest, we have 8. When you look at matched pair analysis is where you look at a home that's sold next to a solar project compared to 3 or 4 similar homes in the market sold in the same time frame, but just not next to a solar farm. We have 29 examples of those in this analysis. Then we also reach out, while we're doing this work, we reach out to the brokers to ask them what they're seeing. We got comments from 17 brokers. All 17 brokers who sold a home that had joined a solar project, every single one of them said it had no impact on property value. And I just thought I would just cite specifically page 61, you can see the very first solar project we talk about. The comments from the broker was not only that it had no impact on property value, but that the buyer was very happy that their neighbor was going to be quiet and would not include any future residential development. So there are reasons where you would expect people to buy next to these. There is definitely some folks who would never choose to live next to a solar project. It's not to say that there isn't. There's clearly some people who would not. But there's more people who consider it to be indifferent or as a positive. And when you're talking about market value, you're looking at the movement of a large group of people. Some people would not live in a 2-story house. That doesn't mean that 2-story houses are negative. Some people wouldn't live in a house that's got a lot of trees around it because they're afraid they'll hit their house. There's plenty of other people who would only live in a house that has trees around it. One person's preferences does not make the market. The market data is tracking that. So again, it's our professional opinion that this project as proposed originally with the setbacks that it originally had would have no impact. At 600 feet, at those distances, when you're 2 football fields away from the nearest house, the data we shows that even without a landscaping screen would not have a negative impact, but they're having 600 feet and a landscaping screen. So they're protected both by distance and by screening. And when we look at these, we do this type of analysis on lots of things, not just solar projects. We are typically looking at, when you're looking at protecting property values, you address any type of issue like this through distance and screening. And this has both of those. So thank you very much.
Good evening, members of the commission. My name is Paul Wyman. I'm from Howard County and appreciate the opportunity to be here and speak with you a little bit this evening. Why here from Howard County? I think I might bring a little unique perspective for you to this project on two fronts. I'm a retired county commissioner in Howard County. About 4 years ago, after 16 years, I retired from county government. And I also own a real estate company in Howard County, and we're celebrating our 25th anniversary, so I've been intimately involved in real estate matters across the board. And lastly, Governor Holcomb appointed me to the Indiana Land Use Task Force, so I have a pretty keen insight on land use across the state of Indiana, and my background and expertise is why he appointed me to that, to offer up these types of experiences and insights. So up in Howard County, we have two things that I think bring a unique perspective to what you guys are thinking about tonight. At the border of Tipton and Howard County, we have a 125 wind turbine, large-scale utility wind farm. And we also have in eastern Howard County a solar project that's being completed by NG literally as we speak. And in that process, as county commissioners, where my first experience with NG came, I can tell you as an elected official working with NG firsthand, they were nothing but superb. Anything that I asked as a county commissioner to them, they did or exceeded, and sometimes to a much higher standard than what might be expected of a solar company. I've worked with many solar companies over the years, and I can speak very highly to NG. But more importantly, what I appreciate about them is the last 4 years being in the private sector and not being in office, I've got to see NG as a corporate citizen in our community. And in my real estate company, giving back and participating in the community is a huge part of what we do. And I will tell you, I've seen NG side by side in the community, working on community initiatives, supporting quality of life initiatives. And so from a private sector standpoint, I can vouch for NG. What I'm really want to share with you guys tonight in my background experience is several things. I know you all down here are experiencing what we're experiencing in Howard County, and that is Senate Bill 1 and the shortfall of revenues that are coming to counties and cities across the state of Indiana. We are in a situation as local governments of being squeezed by decisions that are being made at the state. That forces us and makes it a mandatory situation where we as local elected officials and local communities have to start making our own decisions on how that shortfall gets made up. And so Senate Bill 1 has put that squeeze on. And so when I hear comments about, well, a few people are going to benefit from something like this, it's the furthest from the truth. The truth of the matter is the entire community will benefit from this solar project. And we're experiencing that now in Howard County. Part of our shortfall is being made up by the taxes that will be coming in from NG Solar Project. But more importantly, we've been tasked with building a brand new jail in Howard County for $135 million. And the citizens of Howard County will be paying less out of their pocket for that jail now because of the tax revenue and the economic development agreement negotiated by the commissioners with NG. That's helping everybody across the board. Anytime you increase assessed values, tax rates for all citizens come down, not just people living in the solar farm area. So this truly is an economic impact to the entirety of Montgomery County, not just the solar farm area. I also want to share with you, being in real estate, this whole property value discussion has been very, very personal to me. I've sat where you sat for many years. I've been in meetings like this where the remonstration has been large for not only large-scale utility projects, but many others. And I often heard people speaking about property values in those meetings, and hearing what they were saying at the microphone was different than what I was experiencing being in the real estate business. And I was literally able to bring up in real time factual data and say, well, wait a second, that's not true. Here's what really happened with that home. Here's what that home really sold for. And what that did was it forced me to realize it's time for me to create my own property value study. And so I did that. So for the last 8 years, I have tracked every single sale within the large-scale wind farm area, 125 turbines, including all the way up to a half a mile outside of them. And I have tracked ever since NG announced their project in Howard County, every single real estate sale that not only has happened east of Greentown, Indiana, but has happened in the designated solar project that they are doing. I can show you to a certainty with every single one of those sales that there is no impact on property values. Every single home listed, every single home list price, sale price, homes that are surrounded by 6 and 7 wind turbines, homes that are directly across the street from this solar project that are purchased at full price or above price values. Every single one for the last 8 years. And so I can speak to it with a certainty because I've stood on those front porches with people who have bought these properties. And the gentleman who spoke before me is 100% right. There are some people like, I will never do it. And there are other people that stand on those front porches and they appreciate solar. They appreciate wind. They appreciate the alternative energies. And they appreciate what it means to our community. So I can speak to firsthand to property values, and I'm glad to share that. Glad to invite you up to Kokomo and we can sit there and look at every single sale together. One other thing I always do is I always want to double check my work over that entire time. And I have had a personal relationship with many assessors being a county commissioner around the state of Indiana. And to this day, I still call them and say, this is what I have found this year in my property values. This is what I found and sold. I'm calling you because I know you have large-scale wind or you have large-scale solar, and I need you to verify. Are you experiencing any negative effect on property values? I just completed that this winter, called all 19 of them that have large scale, and to a T, 100% of the 19 assessors said, zero impact on property values. They're seeing exactly what the real estate trends have been in our communities for the last 5, 6, 7 years. Property values are increasing in these areas just as assessed values are. All 19 of them. And then the last thing I'm going to share with you is this, as part of my work on the Land Use Task Force. We hear a lot about the loss of farm ground and the loss of food, and we have to feed people. And certainly we do have to feed people. But here's what I want to share with you. On the Land Use Task Force, we had a study that was completed and that we reviewed. There are 23 million acres of farm ground. This take me 1 minute. 23 million acres of farm ground in the state of Indiana. In the 10 years prior, 340,000 acres of that was converted to other higher use, whether it be subdivision, residential, commercial, solar, wind, whatever the case may be. During that time period when those 340,000 acres were taken out of production, yields in the state of Indiana went up. And that's a direct result of the technology improvements in the farming industry. And those technology improvements will continue. So the fact that we're doing developments to benefit a community and benefit all citizens in the community, from a tax revenue standpoint, it's huge across the board, and it doesn't help our food, it doesn't hurt our food production. So I appreciate the opportunity to share some of those unique insights with you, and hopefully you'll find them helpful as you make your decision tonight. Thank you for your time.
Hello again, Greg Balsano, Baker Tilly Municipal Advisors. Thank you again for having me here this evening. Just as a reminder, yeah, we were hired by NG here to provide a property tax analysis for you guys within that packet. Just a little bit about Baker Tilly. We are a municipal advising firm. I work with clients across the state of Indiana, counties, cities, towns, and as well as some developers, helping them evaluate property taxes and different components like that. So just wanted to mention a little bit about Senate Enrolled Act 1 and how it relates with this project. And the property tax impacts that come from that. And so with this project, we're talking about approximately $104.2 million of additional assessed value beyond what is currently there today. And that additional assessed value, as I mentioned earlier in that Q&A period, that can drive down tax rates or help offset other assessed value losses that could come over time. As you all are probably aware, in recent years, the last 2 years, legislation like in Senate Enrolled Act 1 has put new property tax assessed value deductions as well as taxing credits in place, and 2026 was the first of roughly 6 years or so of those deductions and new assessed value impacts taking place. So just to put some numbers behind that, in 2026, Montgomery County lost approximately $350,000 of its gross levy due to the new homestead credits that were enacted by Senate Enrolled Act 1 in 2025. In 2025 compared to 2026, about 3.3% of the county's gross levy was lost due to taxing credits. In the first year of these new implementation of the new legislation, that increased to approximately 5.5% of the gross levy was lost due to taxing credits. In projecting things out in our analysis, we think that potentially by 2031, that number could be closer to a little over 6% of the gross levy being lost due to taxing credits. So I just wanted to mention some of that. So additional assessed value can help, again, offset those credits by reducing tax rates from what they would have otherwise been. In addition, just recently, within the last few weeks, 2027 certification of assessed values was released for counties across the state of Indiana. Again, this would be year 2 of kind of that 6-year phase-in of the legislation that's in place. Just to put some numbers behind that, the county's assessed value is estimated to grow approximately 1.08% from 2026 to 2027 with those preliminary numbers. And again, as I mentioned earlier today, the levy change that's allowed is a maximum of 6%. So kind of what that correlation means that if levies go up 6%, if that's the choice amongst different units, schools, cities, et cetera, county, that means tax rates would have to go up to be able to likely support that levy because the assessed value didn't grow, more than 6% as an example. So just kind of some high level impacts. And again, that additional $104.2 million of assessed value, or really any assessed value from any new projects that would come into play in Montgomery County would help increase assessed values and potentially offset some of those increased credits that could be coming in the next few years. So I appreciate your time, and thank you for having me.
I'm Ross Foxworthy, Crawfordsville, 2064 East, 550 North. I live on the south end of this thing, if it goes in, and I want to paint a picture. Look at that nice, pretty sign back behind you. See the corn rows and the bean rows on the right? That's really a pretty picture. But if you travel out west, you travel through the east, you get to see farms like that. And then what do? You come around the corner of a mountain, and all of a sudden there's a solar panel. Kind of gripes me. Maybe it doesn't a lot of people, but it does me because I think it's a bad use of soil. We've only had one chance to take care of it in our lifetime. And so as you look at all this, yeah, I can see the good points.
Hey, guys, we keep it down in the back. We're having a hard time hearing them.
I think as we look at all this, I'm not opposed for solar panels in certain situations. The one out here by the interstate that feeds Crawfordsville, that's okay. I think there's problems with it. Fire hazard, if a tornado comes through and the liquid in it, I think a lot of these engineers, unless they even figured out how to do it the last couple of years when that was built, that was one of the main questions. What do you do when we have a problem and it leaks into the soil? And that one's right close to Sugar Creek. And so I think there's problems with it. I think if we have a fire, which we've had in the past, I've had a fire on our farm one year. It's a windy fall day. It's super dry. We hadn't had any rain all year. You get this thing in the middle of this thing where it'd be harder for fire trucks to get down to it, to get it put out. That fire can travel very, very fast in such a short period of time. So again, where does all that liquid go? But just remember, God only give us one chance to take care of the farm ground. It's not going to be better. I remember Rick Ward, the last meeting he was here, he said he had 3 holes dug for windmills. And he said, now to this day, he said he's 50 bushel yield shorter than he was before he put the holes dug. And so, I used to travel that road, 150 East. I used to live on 800 when I graduated Purdue, and my wife and I were married. I farmed a farm on the right. It's the Harold Andrews farm, and opposite of where this solar field be, close to Mark Smith. Went on down. My brother farmed the Cochran farm where the Bullardicks live. It's the best farm ground in Montgomery County. We've got some farm ground on our place. It's got muck ground in the back. It will burn. The burn-off's behind us. It totally, in 1940, the guy was burning a side ditch. My dad told me this, and he said, neighbor come by and he said, you better not burn that side ditch. He said, that ground will burn. The guy kind of chuckled and laughed, and he said, oh, I don't think it will. Well, it was dry, and it never rained any for the rest of the summer. Well, he caught it on fire. The farm burnt down 3 feet clear down to the tile. Dad said you could see the tile all through the field, what there was at the time. Of course, we don't pattern tile back then, but just did what you could. And it wasn't until we got late fall rains that finally put it out. It stunk, it had ash, it blew, and so this isn't the only thing we can do, you know. Windmills have problems, and I'm not sure as much on this. Maybe they're a little safer than windmills, but I do think that we need to really stop and think, and we've got a great plan of what we've done so far to change things. I think they've done a nice job to come back and see that, you know, setbacks and different things. I think the bee thing is probably a good thing. You know, I'm not going to badmouth everything that they said, because I think there is some good things, but I think our county was zoned as a farm community, and I think if you would stay by that, I think it would be a good thing for everyone. Thank you.
My name is Catherine Lindsay, and I live at 2513 South Rotary Road. That's off 2513 South Logan Road, which is off Camp Rotary. Across from some years a cornfield and some years a soybean field. This year it's soybeans. I grew up as a kid with my grandfather who farmed in Arkansas. I helped drive a tractor when I was about 7 years old. I could barely reach the pedals. I went on and lived in Kansas when wind turbines came into play, and there was a lot of controversy about them. Then I moved to Texas, and we had a lot of drilling, and we had concerns about our water. We had concerns about drought. We had concerns about wildfires. I came to Indiana 5 years ago, and I became aware of the solar panels here in Montgomery County, because my husband and I took one of those little books and we drove all around the county. We were trying to find a place to eat back during the pandemic, and there weren't very many places open. But I got to see the county, and I've seen some of Indiana. I understand that Indiana used to have lots and lots and lots of trees, but we turned those trees into farmland. My concern today is not fire safety because of the solar panels, toxicity because of for the water. I'm not so concerned about the loss of the agricultural land, because we're doing that with data centers, we're doing that with shopping centers, and we're doing that by building unaffordable homes in a county that is lacking affordable housing. That's a big concern in this county. I see that the solar project would bring economic growth to our community, and it could help us to provide affordable housing to people in this county, which is in dire need. I speak in support of this project. I attended the March hearing, and I've sat through all the hearing today. I've been reading and I've been listening to the farmers and the people who live on the land, because I come from there. But I live in a new world, and I have grandchildren who are 6th and 8th grade, and they're going to be here long after I'm gone. And I want them to have a healthy life, and I see solar and wind and that kind of technology, clean technology, as being important to their welfare.
Tom, is there anyone on the rotunda? Do you know? Okay, all right. Well, at this time, 7:12, our public hearing's closed. If no one else would like to speak. Okay. The petitioner, do you have time for a rebuttal?
Thank you. Just a couple comments. In terms of health and safety and things that were addressed earlier, I just wanted to add on 2 points. So just to be clear, there's no liquid inside of the panels themselves. There isn't, and so there's no risk of any leakage of liquid from the panels. And then when it comes to our vegetative ground cover, primarily cool season grasses, and so as a result of that, and with our maintenance of those cool season grasses, there's much lower risk for drying out of grasses that would be fuel, right? You have 2 seasons of growth, and they do not get overly dry. That could contribute to a fire. We're managing that through our normal management. Beyond that, I think I really just want to sum a couple things up and really just say thank you. really appreciate your time in learning more about the improvements we've made to the project since March, considering what the public has to say here. And I just want to reiterate that this is the first step in the process, right? We want to be a long-term partner with the community. We want to continue to learn feedback. We want to continue to make improvements. We want to build this project the right way. And so this is the first step of the project here tonight. I also just want to reiterate our willingness to accept the conditions from the staff report. We will not expand where the solar panels are located. I just want to reiterate that again for the commission here tonight. And then lastly, looking through the guidelines again, no single factor should be determinative. You're looking at all the factors, and with these improvements when it comes to setbacks and buffering, we strongly believe that it fits the character of the area better, aligns with some of the core tenets of the comprehensive plan, is a desirable use from our landowners, from other members of the community, and is compatible with agricultural uses here today. No impact to property values, as we've discussed, and is a responsible form of development, bringing large numbers of tax payments to the county over decades, reliable assessed value income. So through this process, we've thought carefully about the siting. We've thought carefully about improvements. We will continue to do so, and we ask for your supportive, favorable recommendation to the commissioners tonight, and we greatly appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom. Now we'll move to discussion to the board.
As I sit through this again, and we did back in March, I would like to make a motion that we delay our vote tonight because of some additional information. I'd like to see more of a attendance for the quorum, but yet limit it to within the next 30 days to have the vote. That'd be my recommendation for tonight.
I would say if we do that, we need to limit it to the vote and not public comment.
100% agreed to that. Thanks for that comment.
So there's been a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Okay.
Just to clarify, you're basically saying you want to table the decision until the next meeting, correct? Okay, just making sure.
So the next meeting? Well, or do we? It doesn't have, it can be next week, whenever we decide on a time and a date.
That's That's what they are discussing, isn't it? Is it the next commissioner date, or do we need to set that for the next plan? Okay, I guess we need to discuss as far as when we want to do that, so.
Discuss as in when we want to have this next,
Correct.
next week? Do we want 2 weeks' time to give people time to?
Would this time next week work?
Can I ask exactly what more information we're waiting for?
Well, I don't know that we're waiting for more information. I think we gathered more information today, and so that's just my only point is, you know, we need time to process at times, right? Even though we had a meeting back in March, and it hasn't changed a lot, in my opinion. But I'm just throwing that out there to the commission, whether we do or we don't. But personally, that's my recommendation, that we table it until next week or whatever, but that's up for, obviously, discussion and vote.
Do you have any comment on that, Tom?
I just misunderstood him when he first made the motion. I thought he was saying we were waiting on some answers from NG or from Copperbox. I just wanted to make sure, because I know a couple of comments were made and questions were asked about some information that's actually not appropriate to come out today. It will come out when the development plan is submitted to us, once they get the design correct, with specific questions about the transformers and things of that nature. So I just wanted to make sure that's not what we were waiting on.
No, that is
Okay.
not what I'm just talking about.
Thank you.
Just to clarify, Dan, we're good to do that moving forward.
The commission can table it if they want. Again, you would just need to, I would recommend you select a date in which you would come back so that all the parties know that, whenever that is. I would not, you need to table it to a certain date in time.
I would table it to the 18th where everything's fresh and not hold it back any longer than what it needs to be.
Same time, 4 o'clock?
Yeah, I'm fine with the 18th, I believe.
So we've had a motion, a second, to move the vote to 8/18 at 4 p.m. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay, thank you. We'll be back here next week at 4 o'clock.